concern, you want to talk to us about a problem you're experiencing, you think you might have, or how to plan for the future with your legal needs, you call 540-0580. And, of course, throughout the week, you go to weekendappointment.com. That's weekendappointment, 2 words, .com. And you post your legal question there. And if you become a registered user, you can get a free will. That's a no-cost will. You go to weekendappointment.com and you register there. You also post, like I say, throughout the week, your legal questions. I had a really good one here. Who is responsible for the repair of my 6-foot privacy wooden fence that is being pushed up by my neighbor's tree root? The neighbor or myself? I want to know some facts before I confront him. Thank you. And I answered it, but I didn't give an answer. I cited a case. I wasn't sure about that one. And the case I put up comes out of Delaware County, Pennsylvania from 1986, and it seems to be the law of the matter. And the answer is it's nobody's fault. It's the tree's fault. And if it's the natural condition of the neighbor's land and the tree root is a natural phenomenon, it's nobody's fault, and it's not your neighbor's fault, so it's your problem to deal with on your own. At least that's what the case seems to say. But I encourage folks to go to weekendappointment.com and look that question up. The question being, it's entitled Tree Root, and it's in the miscellaneous legal topics section. I strongly urge you to read it because that'll help you understand how courts come to the conclusions they do. And it's a good example of an opinion where the court says, well, there's nothing quite like it out there before this, but let's analogize it to some other issues and see what we come up with. So go to weekendappointment.com, look up the tree root question. It's also in the email that I sent to all our registered users today, reminding you about the show. So if you got the email, you can go to your email, you can pop it up and click through very easily. Alan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Alan?
Well, right now I live in a condo association, and we have a road that runs through it that they built 22 years ago and turned over to the township.
Okay.
And we have a very strict rule in the association that no one can park a mobile home on the street in front of their unit.
Okay.
Well, we have somebody doing that, and the township has a rule. They categorize streets, and this street is categorized one that you can park a mobile home on, but you can't park a trailer that is pulled by a truck.
Okay.
And my attitude is that we cannot do something that is more severe than the township. For example, we can't say you're allowed to park a tractor trailer here.
Well,
but in this case, we're restricting below the township level, and we have 2 penalties. We can fine $50 a day, or we can, if it's a lease, we can go in and break the lease on behalf of the leaseholder.
Right. Well, the answer is, I guess what you're asking is, can you enforce your rules? And I don't think it matters whether it's a township road or not. Now, here's the issue. If I bring my camper over there and park on the public road, probably nothing you can do about it, right? It's a registered vehicle. It's on a public road running through.
Right.
On the other hand, if I'm a resident, I am subject to the terms and covenants of the agreements that I agreed to at closing, which are your rules, any changes and amendments to your rules that are done by the proper homeowners' procedures. So you can absolutely enforce your rules.
Thank you for the information.
Go get them, Alan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Homeowners associations, folks, remember that. When you sign up and join into a homeowners association, you're going to be bound by the rules of that association, and the township has nothing to do with that. That's a private agreement between the landowners and the purchase of the house. You sign that the acknowledgement of the rules, or you took it subject to the recorded rules and easements, you're stuck. So yeah, that fella can absolutely enforce those. Remember, the talk line number is 540-0580. If you have a legal question, you call us. We'll answer it here on the air. If throughout the week you need an attorney, you think you need an attorney, I have a general practice. We service the mid-state, and you go to weekendappointment.com where you can find our contact information. I got a status report on one of our posted questions here. We had somebody had complained about sending some money to somebody and not getting the service they wanted and getting blown off by them. We suggested that they file a complaint or threaten a private lawsuit, and they followed some of my general advice, which is send a registered letter or send a letter. and they tell us they received a full refund. So, folks, remember that. If you have a dispute with somebody, you can call till you're blue in the face and complain, but put it in writing. That's proof of when you did it. Keep a copy of it. Send it return receipt requested. Get a copy of that green card, staple it to the copy of the letter you have, and then later on the other person says, well, I didn't know he had a problem with anything. Well, no, that's there. Also, another really interesting question this week, the statutes of limitations and discovery rule. There, somebody had drilled a well in 2001. They just discovered a problem with the well, and it's going to cost them $12,000 to fix it, and they want to know if the statute of limitations is over. And the answer is no, because the discovery rule, and they were correct in thinking that was an issue here. It's when you realize the problem occurred. Now, here's the issue. Sometimes the other side will argue you should have discovered it sooner. So you've got to bring your legal claim as quickly as possible when you realize you have one, and get to see a lawyer. Go see a lawyer immediately so you can find out whether or not there is one. And there's another little thing out there called the statute of repose, which means sometimes after a certain period of time you can't bring a claim at all. So for construction projects, and I've posted the statute on Weekend Appointment and answered that question, there's a 12-year statute of repose where you can't recover damages after 12 years for any deficiency in the design, planning, supervision, or observation of the construction or construction of the improvement. So you got to discover it within 12 years. That's to protect contractors so you don't get sued for something you did 30 years ago. You have this repose, which will cut off your limitations in the future, even if they're never discovered or latent. So if you think you have a legal claim because somebody did something wrong in terms of construction, you've only discovered it recently, you got to see a lawyer right away to make sure you're within the discovery period and that you're also not going to be exempted from a court action by the statute of repose, which stands at 12 years. And remembering that those limitations are sometimes hard and firm and sometimes not. You should always assume that they are hard and fast when you're trying to decide how quickly you should act until you're told otherwise by your legal professional. What else did we have on Weekend Appointment? We had a lot of good questions this week. I have a joint account with someone. Is it legal to close the account without his or her permission? The answer is that depends on what your banking agreement is. If you have an agreement with the bank and you both sign it for a joint account, it's going to say under what conditions can it be canceled or closed. Interestingly, remember, if you put your money in a joint account with me, and it's a true joint account, and I can remove all the money, I might not be able to close the account, but I can leave everything but a buck in there, and then you'll be without your money, and the account will still be open. So, but as for closing joint accounts, joint investment accounts, things like that, you need to look at the bank or agreement with whoever you're holding the account with, which is what you usually signed at the beginning. You should have a copy of that. If you don't, as a joint account holder, you're obviously going to have a right to collect that. Again, the talk line number is 540-0580, 540-0580. We're going to go to break here now. When we get back from the ads, we'll take some more calls, 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, the show's Weekend Appointment, show where I answer your legal questions. If you have one, call in, 540-0580. It is a wonderful life, Shane. 540-0580. John, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's your question?
When I was 19, I was involved in as an accomplice in an armed robbery, and I was wondering if I'm now 33, I was wondering if there's any way to restore my gun rights.
I assume you're convicted with a felony of some sort?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Restoration of gun rights is turned out to be a huge boondoggle. Pennsylvania has a sort of a restoration statute. One half of the restoration statute talks to crimes that were formerly something and are now something else. Most people fall under a different subsection, which is the lifting of the prohibition if you're more than 10 years post. The federal government does not accept that as a lifting or a true restoration of civil rights for purposes of the federal gun laws. So right now, as a felon not to possess in Pennsylvania, you're prohibited from having any kind of firearm. What I could do is get a restoration of your firearm rights in Pennsylvania, so to speak, by lifting the prohibition, and then you can use muzzle loaders because the federal law exempts black powder weapons, but the Pennsylvania law does not. So we could get you back to black powder, And I don't know if you've shot any modern black powder weapons recently, which I know you haven't because you couldn't. But if you had or know somebody that did, you would know that the modern inlines and things like that are pretty comparable to a lot of center fire weapons for hunting purposes. So while you only get one shot, they're it's not such a bad position to be in if you want to go deer hunting.
Sure.
So you could get to that stage. Then to get the federal prohibition lifted, we'd have to get Congress to fund the ATF because they're supposed to be restoring your firearms rights at the federal level, but Congress refuses to fund it. And the courts have sort of said, well, there's nothing we can do about that, so you can't get it back. So as it stands right now, it's virtually impossible, best we can tell, although nobody's completely tangled with the ATF on what's called a mandamus, and I'm not sure if there's any results on that yet or not. But at least as it looks right now, you could get Pennsylvania back very tough on the federal. Something needs to be done on the legislative end there.
Well, how do I go about getting the Pennsylvania prohibition lifted?
Well, what we would do is we would file a petition for restoration of the privileges or to lift the prohibition under a certain statute, and we do that in the common pleas court in the county where you reside.
Okay.
All right, John?
All right, thank you.
All right, and by the way, you go to weekendappointment.com, you find my contact information. I do know how to do those petitions.
Sounds great.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's tough right now if you've got a crime in Pennsylvania and it's been years. Remember, that's why you got to fight early and often in the crimes, folks. If you get charged with something, accused of something, if you didn't do it, don't plead guilty. If you did it, be careful about pleading guilty because you have all kinds of collateral consequences. Let the lawyer work out the best for you. And if you currently have a lawyer and you're working on a criminal matter, ask him or her if he knows what the collateral consequences of the conviction are. I go nutty because all these defense attorneys out there go, oh, I didn't know that would remove his gun rights. I thought the misdemeanor 3. I'm like, yeah, it's a Lautenberger Amendment. You ever hear of that? Robert, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Robert?
Oh, yes, Mr. Rominger. Listen, I have a sibling in Pittsburgh that I said I would call you. I appreciate your program, but she's filing bankruptcy.
Okay.
Now, I filed bankruptcy. I came from California 25 years ago, and I had a bad real estate situation there. And I filed bankruptcy, paid the attorney, I think, $550, and that was the end of it. But she told me that she used her last $500 and some to pay the attorney, and now that the court wants $800 to proceed with the bankruptcy. And I thought, why was it not then and is now?
What was the question? Why is it?
The question is, what is the $800 for now? They didn't ask for that before.
Well, I don't know what kind of bankruptcy she's filing.
It's personal.
Yeah, but is it a 7 or a 13?
I can't answer that.
Yeah. 7s are done on a flat rate, and there's filing fees involved. If it's a 13, the fees are set by the court, and the court might want money for certain things. I don't know if that's for attorney's fees that they want the money for, administrative costs.
She broke herself just paying the attorney. And how would she pay the $800? That's the situation. I had never heard of that. I don't know everything or much.
What I would tell her to do is consult with another bankruptcy attorney for a second opinion out there. Everything's local, if that makes sense, and that is the Western District of Pennsylvania Bankruptcy Court. And I don't know what fees they charge out there. But it sounds like she's trying to file a 7, and perhaps she's $500 into the attorney. But I would guess, and maybe she needs to really look at this, but usually Chapter 7s run around $1,000 plus the filing fees. And if I'm adding $800 and $500 together, I'm getting $1,300, which sounds suspiciously like the filing fee plus the $1,000 fee that most attorneys charge.
The reason I was confused, it didn't exist with me when I had to file 25 years ago.
Well, two things. Number one, the bankruptcy laws probably changed at least twice in that time period. Number two, every court has different filing fees. In California, the federal courts in California are not the same as the federal.
I filed against my credit cards I used to support me,
Okay, and you filed in what, the Middle District of Pennsylvania 25 years ago?
And in the York area.
Yeah. So different court, different fees, and things have changed a lot in 25 years, Robert.
Okay,
but $1,300 sounds about right because it's probably a $290 filing fee plus a $1,000 attorney fee. That sounds right to me.
Okay, I'll relate that to her. And listen, I really appreciate your service you're putting out to people.
Hey, thank you very much, Robert. Just be sure and send people to weekendappointment.com if they need it. All right, thanks.
You have a good day.
Thank you. Folks, talk line is 540-0580. This show is Weekend Appointment. I'm Carl Rominger. I'm an attorney. I answer your legal questions. And those of you who listen for the whole hour, and I know that there's two of you that do, you might wonder why I repeat who I am once in a while. But, sometimes you jump in the car and you like to know who you're talking to. Jerry, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's your question?
Is this Jerry?
Jerry, yeah. Well, I don't know. Are you Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay, it's you, Jerry.
Thank you, attorney. After giving over to a sheriff's sale in 2008 because missing some medical bill payments, we were approached by two women who saw it in the paper, and they represented another woman who runs a real estate company. And she offered us a 1-year loan on our property and house while they cleared up our credit. And supposedly at the end of the 1-year refinance, we could get a normal home mortgage.
Okay.
Now, at the end of this 1-year finance and not missing any payments and getting our bills, our credit score better, we found out that they had sold our home. One of the partners sold my house to his brother. We were contacted by the FBI, and it's under investigation, and they referred us to another attorney office in Carlisle.
Okay.
And the woman told us that that the FBI was telling people to go to her. She's filing a class action suit. And what I'm wondering is a class action suit, would it be to my advantage to get my own lawyer instead of getting a class action suit?
Well, and Jerry, let me give you an example. People get these things in the mail, and it says you can opt out of the class, and if you opt out of the class, you can bring your own claim and go through your own lawyer. And sometimes people bring them into me and say, well, Carl, what should I do? And the answer is it all depends. You probably could go see another lawyer and get a second opinion on your private cause of action. The advantage of a class action is it allows a lot of people to share the expense of one lawsuit, basically.
Yeah.
And sometimes the recovery is as good as or better than you would get on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, and I think of a time I had a guy come into me and he says, hey, I got this notice of a class action against this insurance company, and I'd bought some policies from them. And it says here that if I take option A, I can get a free year of insurance. And if I take option B, I can get a discount, of 20% forever on my insurance. It says I can take option C. I go to a board of arbitrators and get some other relief as applicable. And I said, well, do you still have the policies? And he says, no, I don't. I had one of them still, but I don't really care about it. It's not that valuable. I said, well, circle option C and let it go to arbitration and see what you get. Well, I think he ended up getting like $40,000. And I kind of chuckled because it was funny because, at one level, you could have taken a little discount or a free policy or something like this. But if you opt for C, you spin the wheel, the big wheel, and sometimes it comes up on bankrupt, and sometimes it comes up apparently on $40,000. So I don't know what to tell you. I was
wondering if maybe I could. I have a UAW legal plan, and they pay for a consultation.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever worked with them before, but they're really good. I mean, they just pay right away, whatever your fee is.
Well, Jerry, if I
could make an appointment to talk to you about this a little more in detail.
Yeah, Jerry, you got a pen on you?
Yes, I do.
My office phone number is 241
Okay.
6070.
Okay.
Yeah, call me there. Let whoever answers. One of the nice ladies that answers the phone. You tell them you talk to me on the radio. Make an appointment. Come in and see me. And I do Sunday afternoon appointments.
Why can't you come in? Could I get a phone consultation?
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I sometimes tell people phone consultation is a good way to go. The other thing is we do Sunday afternoons because sometimes people can't get in any other day. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And I'll get a case number then from the UAW. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, thank you very, very much.
And I like your show.
Hey, thank you.
And I do listen to the whole thing. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate having a few listeners. I got to tell you, I've had a chance to meet a lot of you, not all of you yet, but a lot of you, because people are signing up for the free will on weekendappointment.com. When they sign up for the free will, it gets sent to me. I go over it. I write you a will by hand. Jennifer in my office and I do every one of those and go over every one of those. Then I meet with you to make sure we got it right and make sure it's the right thing for you. Then sometimes we do living wills and we do powers of attorney, and then we go forward from there. But I've had a great opportunity to meet many of the listeners, and I really appreciate that. And it's a great way to do it. So make sure you sign up for the free will on weekendappointment.com. I'm happy to do those for you. Remember, the talk line number is 540-0580. I did have somebody put down, I'm currently in a 1-year rental agreement. However, I may need to relocate soon. What are my rights, responsibilities, and obligations in breaking a rental agreement? Well, you can't break an agreement without consequence. But theoretically, if you go to the landlord and you negotiate with the landlord and say, hey, I might have to move out. What do I do? Sometimes the landlord will say, well, I don't care. I don't need a tenant. That's very rare. Or the landlord might say, well, if you can find a new tenant so we don't miss any months of rent, I'll let them take over the remainder of your lease or even sign a longer lease with them and forgive you. Sometimes you just have to move out and keep paying the monthly rent with an understanding that the landlord's going to try to find a new tenant. Other times you can get a liquidation agreement. Well, you say to the landlord, listen, I'm moving out September 1. Would you take hey, let me finish this after the break, folks. 540-0580, and we'll talk about breaking a lease and take some more calls after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580, talk line number. Seth, you're on WHP 580. What's your question?
Yes, I was wondering about the 2010 census and whether or not I'd get into any trouble if I told them that I was, for the ethnicity question, if I told them that I was an American.
I don't think you get in any trouble. They might follow up with you and ask what you mean by that, and you could. I think you're allowed to be whatever race you think you are. So as long as you answer the question, it might be other on the sheet, but nonetheless, I don't think you get any real trouble for that. However, we posted a long time ago the census law on weekendappointment.com, and it seems like theoretically there's like a $100 fine for willfully refusing to answer a question, but I don't think it says that there's a right answer or a wrong answer.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think Seth's just trying to make a point that he's an American and doesn't really matter what your race is. I kind of agree with that. We just had a golfer win. It was an Asian golfer win, and now they say it's the first Asian to win. And I said, that's interesting because last I checked, I thought Tiger Woods was half Thai. But what do I know? Sharon, you're on WHP 580.
Hi. I have a question for my son.
Okay.
His in-laws own their home plus 4 other properties. And last year they put a swimming pool up. And this year they went to put a swimming pool up. And his in-laws told him they couldn't do it because if anyone drowns in the pool, that they could be sued and lose all their property. Is that true?
Well, I guess it could possibly happen. Let me explain this. This pool thing drives me nutty. And let me tell you, though, more little kids die in accidental drownings every year than they do from accidental gun discharges. So while everybody sits in terrible fear of guns, pools kill more kids than anything else. I think I want to think under 5, it's like 100 or 200 kids a year. It's a ridiculously large number. But if you own a home, you should have something called homeowner's insurance, which will cover you for liability. So generally speaking, your homeowner's insurance policy will include, and you should talk to your insurance agent and say, yeah, I have a pool, and maybe I'd like a little extra coverage. So, $200,000, $500,000 in liability coverage on the pool, that usually would cover it. Now, you could say, well, yeah, but I have assets beyond that. If these people actually own 4 homes, and they actually, right, I was saying, but they actually have some wealth of some sort.
Yes, they do.
And they don't hold what's called an umbrella policy, then they're idiots. And what I mean by that is, once you have some wealth, once you have some savings and a couple homes, things like that, you got to sit down with your insurance guy and say, hey, what am I going to do if somebody dies on my property and I'm somehow responsible? How much coverage do I need? And interestingly, when you buy one of these umbrella policies, it covers you above and beyond your auto insurance and your homeowner's policy. You can get millions of dollars of coverage very, very cheaply. And particularly if you're somebody who owns multiple homes and properties, when I say very, very cheaply, you'd be surprised at how inexpensive an umbrella policy really is. So the answer is, yeah, technically somebody could drown in the pool and there could be a lawsuit, but first there'd have to be negligence and the people would have to be greedy and want to go for more than the homeowner's insurance policy and still go after the people. But if they have an umbrella policy, which they should have if they're not idiots, I like to use that word for some reason.
Okay, I agree with you with the idiot part, but go ahead.
And, so if they don't have an umbrella policy, I always like to joke about this. People say, well, aren't you worried that somebody's going to slip on the ice in front of your office? And I say, we got $1 million in liability. Let them fall.
Yeah, let them.
And the answer is no. I mean, we go out there and chop it down and clean it up. But that's the point. That's why you carry insurance. And that's why any business has insurance. And that's why anybody who has two sticks to rub together insures the two sticks and goes forward from there. But, yeah.
Well, if they have renter's insurance, since they are technically renting, that it would still come under his in-laws, the in-laws insurance.
Well, it depends who owns the pool. I mean, theoretically, if the lease is done right, then the liability should not be on the landlord. But then again, I would sit around in my office. I've done some wrongful death cases over the years, and I can tell you that one of the things I do whenever I have a wrongful death or any other kind of personal injury case is I sit around for hours and hours and hours researching and studying and trying to weasel around any possible defense somebody might have. So I can tell you, I mean, they're not completely crazy. A guy like me is going to sit around and go, okay, I can get the renter's insurance policy, but can I get to the landowner? How can I get to the landowner? And I will sit around and toy with that and look and look and look. And if I can find a way, I will. So, and we have. So they're not completely crazy when they're worried, but they are completely crazy if they don't have an umbrella insurance policy, so they don't have to worry about this stuff. It's like these guys. I like to fish, and over the years I've asked for permission to fish in a lot of farm ponds, and most farmers say sure, but every once in a while I get one that says, we can't let anybody fish there because if they drown, we're going to get sued. No, you're not going to get drowned. You're not going to get sued because I drowned in your farm pond. You're going to get sued because some kid trespasses and drowns in your farm pond. But you're not going to get sued because you gave me permission to fish there. And by the way, you own a lot of land. You must have some kind of like homeowner's insurance policy on or general liability policy on all this land, right? Oh, anyhow, that's my answer for you is, yeah, they could put a swimming pool in. There's lots of ways to protect it, and they really shouldn't be a problem. But you're never going to make the irrational rational, so they're probably not going to get a swimming pool.
Yeah, I thought with the above-ground pool that it was not as technical as an in-ground pool, but
well,
I wasn't sure on it. But I guess if anyone gets hurt on your property, it doesn't matter what kind of pool it is.
Then the only question is whether there's negligence. So, classic example. The number one kid to drown in a pool, by the way, is not the neighbor's kids. It's your own kids, because here's what happens: mom's in the kitchen cooking dinner, and Johnny and Janie wander out to the pool, and one of them falls in. Somehow they drown. Little kids do that. So you got to keep it locked. You're supposed to have fencing, all this kind of stuff. And I even recall a case where one of the dogs in the household somehow managed to open the gate, because sometimes dogs do that sort of thing. And then the kids got into the pool, and one of them drowned. Very big tragedy, and it was horrible. But nonetheless, nobody plans this stuff. But usually it's not when you have 10 people over and everybody's sitting around the pool that there's liability. It's usually when it's the family itself or the niece and nephew are over.
Right.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your information.
All right, and tell them, get a general liability policy and get an umbrella policy.
There you go.
All right, Sharon.
They won't have any more this year, but maybe if she checks, and then maybe next year they can have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Tom, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Tom.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, you're on the air, Tom.
Very good. Hey, I have a question about a living will. I have a living will.
Okay.
I have a power of attorney.
Okay.
My son has it. He lives in the state closest to Pennsylvania. All my children live out of state.
Okay.
A copy of it is filed with my attorney. So my question is this. Let's say I have an incident at home. I live alone. I have a heart attack or an incident at home. I'm unconscious. The ambulance comes. I can at least make the call to 911. The ambulance comes to take me to the emergency room. How do they know I have a living will?
They don't.
Okay.
And
then what good is the living will? I don't mean that in a bad way, but are they supposed? They're going to resuscitate me, I'm sure.
yeah, and the no resuscitation clause. Let me be clear about this. I mean, at least maybe you want it to be different, but here's my theory. If I fall off my bar stool and hit my head, I want them to try to resuscitate me and keep me alive. Now, if it turns out that I'm brain dead or in a permanent vegetative state, then go ahead and pull the plug, okay?
Right.
But here's the deal. Emergency responders are not going to look around to see what your wishes are. They're going to try to resuscitate and save you as best as possible, stabilize your medical condition, and then let a full-fledged doctor make a determination about brain activity and the like. So I don't want them to make a guess at the scene, so to speak. But here's what happens. Now you've been in a bad accident. They've got you hooked up to a respirator, and you're in a permanent vegetative state. Your son, your daughter, whoever can roll in, your attorney, and say, here's what his wishes were. And then what you've prevented is the big fight amongst all the family members because somebody's got a document. And then the hospital says, okay, it's clear, it's easy, so we'll go ahead and remove these these things and do palliative care only.
Okay. Yep. That's more clear. And I wasn't like my doctor has a copy of it even, but I'm thinking it's that situation like you just described, an auto accident or something where nobody really knows. So what you're saying is they can then go forward at some point once the living will is disclosed and say, okay, his wishes were that he did not want to be, kept on life support or whatever.
Right. And that's going to be the biggest thing I think to remember is the way these things work is it's not going to be used in that initial flash and fury of a medical crisis. It's going to be used once things calm down. And, again, I'm sort of the mind like, you know what? I'd rather they wait a few days and just be sure that my brain's turned off.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
All right, Tom.
Because I've done everything right. I just wanted to know who would know it.
You've done it. You've done everything you can.
Okay.
Unless you want to tattoo it to your arm.
Right. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. WHP 580, Carl Rominger here. My talk line number is 540-0580. See you after the break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Weekend appointment. Talk line numbers 540-0580. Let's see who's been holding the longest. Rita, you've been patient. Rita.
Yes.
You're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi. My question is about buying a vacant property, which is next to our house.
Okay.
Now, there was a development that went in behind our house.
And let me stop you for a second. When you say vacant, do you mean an empty lot or an abandoned house?
No, it's just a lot.
Okay, just an empty lot.
Right. So originally we were told when we bought our house that it was to be a right-of-way to that area. In the meantime, the big area was sold, and I think they forgot about this vacant property.
Okay.
But our neighbor and us have been taking care of it for 39 years. My husband mows it, puts fertilizer on it, takes care of it. So after this development was begun, we contacted the owner, which is this owner is in another state, has a lot of properties, and we had a contract to buy it, but he will not. Our lawyer said that because he is used to dealing in millions, he's not interested in selling this because it's in a trust, and he has to contact a lot of people.
Right.
So, I call at least 2 times a year to check to see, if anything has changed. My question is kind of if we should go ahead and put a building on there, like a shed or something, would that help at all? They say there's a 7-year.
You want to try to create a claim for adverse possession.
Yeah.
I can't counsel you to trespass on somebody else's land, right?
Right.
But I could tell you that, if you built something on it 7 years later, you might be able to make a claim that that, and I don't know, maybe you could even, here's what I would counsel you to do. I would not counsel you to trespass. What I would counsel you to do is say you've been taking care of it this many years.
Right.
File the adverse possession claim. Now all of a sudden it's going to get cheaper and easier to deal with you and just deed you over the property in exchange for some money because you're going to have to defend the lawsuit. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? That now you got the attention of the $1 million trust because they're going to be like, well, we can just, well, maybe they won't even bother. Maybe they just won't even defend.
Okay. I had checked on that before we made the offer, to buy it, and they had said unless we had a fence around it or a building on it, that,
Yeah, I mean it's a very weak claim. But I don't know. You're going to wait another 7 years?
Well, we were told that nobody else would be able to buy it, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Yeah, because if you put a building on it and you're waiting your 7 years, you put your shed on it, somebody else could still buy it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'd aggressively push the issue. But other than that, I don't know what to tell you to do because, if somebody owns property and they want to just sit on it, I guess they're allowed to.
Okay.
All right, Rita.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's what I would go after them. See, sometimes, folks, even if you have a legal claim that's weak, you can still settle it. It sounds like they just need to get this guy's attention. Although, again, I'm not counseling a lawsuit just to get people's attention because I don't think that's the right way to go. But here they might have a colorable legal claim for adverse possession. I think mowing the lawn for 30 years might get you there. Frank, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Good afternoon, Carl. Is it possible that a person can put you in a class action suit against the company even if you don't want to?
Yeah, if you're a member of the class, in other words, you're part of the described class, they have to give you notice, but usually the notice consists of advertising as well as mailings, and then you're deemed to be a member of the class. So unless you opt out of the class, you are a member of the class.
Yeah, but I don't think that I should have to turn around and send all my information into this bird from California that opened a class up in New York.
Right, but you know what? Here's
because I own stock.
That's why some companies like to be sued in class actions. And people go, oh, these class action lawsuits. What they forget is a lot of times defendants are like, oh, no, please make it a class. Because once you make it a class and you do all the advertising and all the other rigmarole, I can cap liability because I can make sure that nobody else is going to weasel out of the woodwork later on.
So, I don't want to be included, but I don't want to send all my information out to this here guy in California.
Well, you're part of the class until you opt out.
Well, the only thing I can do is just leave it go through, and in case anything comes up, just refuse it. Yeah,
but you're still a member of the class, and all your other legal rights will be extinguished.
Even though I didn't sign nothing or didn't agree with nothing.
Right. You have to opt out of the class. That's just the law. I can't change the whole world for you. I can only tell you what it is.
Yeah, right.
So,
in order for me to get out of it, I have to send the information in.
You have to opt out, so they have to know who you are, yeah.
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 All right, thank you very much.
All right, Captain, no problem. Hey, what can I do, folks? I can't rewrite the law for Frank, you know what I mean? Did get an interesting question in on Weekend Appointment just a second ago. Talk line number, by the way, is 540-0580. Guy wants to know, should he stack his insurance, and what's the difference between stacked and unstacked? And remember, I still owe you all this report on insurance I'm dutifully working on. But short question, I'll answer it. Always get stacked. Stacked means you can stack up the multiple coverages for the automobiles you own. So if you own 3 cars and you get hurt in an accident and the other guy's uninsured or underinsured, and you have a $50,000 or $100,000 policy on each car, you get to stack them, meaning you get multiply the number of cars by your policy limit. We always recommend you take stacking. Do not waive stacking. You will give up important coverage that will be helpful to you later, and you'll find that waiving the stacking only saves you a small amount of money generally. Rick, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Rick?
Hello.
Yeah,
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
I have a question. I'm actually on the way back to Virginia from Buffalo now. My mother has passed away about 9 months ago, and my sister was put as executor of the will.
Okay.
And she basically has done nothing with the property. She did not mean that. She's really not really doing her job. The lawyers keep calling us for information that she's supposed to be giving. But I had gone home and gotten okay from her to start do something with the house. I mean, that house was the same thing. All the furniture, everything was in that house since the day she died. So I've gotten everything out. And I'm a contractor in Virginia, and I used to be a contractor in New York. I'm a licensed contractor. I went in and got her estimates and had the flooring done, did carpets and tile, and ripped all the hardwood out and put a new dishwasher, anything that we needed to do because she wanted to fix it up and sell it instead of selling it as is, which everybody suggested to her. She wants to flip this house, I guess. I don't know. And now that all the work's done, she got in an argument with me, and now she's trying to get me to tear everything out of the house. I had no contract with her at a verbal agreement.
This happened in New York State. Am I catching that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Rick, here's the caveat about the show. I'm a Pennsylvania attorney. I can only answer Pennsylvania questions because the law is different by state. Okay. But if you go to weekendappointment.com, in the upper right-hand corner, I have a legal match link. And anybody out there listening who has a legal question for a friend, relative, themselves, but it isn't Pennsylvania related, you go to legal match link in the upper right-hand corner. You click on there and follow the instructions there. Okay?
All right, can I just one thing? How hard is it to get somebody taking off as the executor of a will? It's a pretty hard situation.
In Pennsylvania, it's not simple, but we've done it many times.
Have you? Okay.
Yep. Can't answer out-of-state questions, folks. That's the short answer. Attorneys are licensed by state, for those of you who don't realize it. My family's all from New York, and I've avoided getting a New York law license, which I could get fairly easily at this stage in my practice, simply so that I can tell all my relatives, sorry, I can't help you. I'm a Pennsylvania attorney. Fortunately or unfortunately, my brother lives in Pennsylvania, so he gets some free legal advice from time to time. Again, back to that stacking. Make sure you always get stacked insurance. Make sure you are always full tort. If you're limited tort, tear it up and get a new policy. You may save a little money in the short run, but wait until you try to collect some money in an accident. Oh, boy. What else did I want to tell you, folks? Oh, we got somebody from Derry Township. He's upset because they have a leash law over there that's not very good. And he's very upset about that. He's been trying to change it. And he wanted to know if the township had any liability. And the answer is they have sovereign immunity, and they have a lot of protections against lawsuits. And if you go to Weekend Appointment, you can see the answer I posted, and I gave the sovereign immunity statute in full. And that's the music, so I have to go. Remember to go to weekendappointment.com, post your questions throughout the week. Remember to go there and get the free will. And remember to stop back every Saturday at 2 p.m. to get your questions answered on the air. And throughout the week, you can contact me in my office. We have 4 lawyers. We're happy to serve you. We practice throughout the mid-state region. So go to weekendappointment.com to get our contact information, and I will see you folks next week at 2. Do you have a legal question you want answered? Go to romingerlaw.com. That's ROMINGERLAW.com. romingerlaw.com to get your question answered.
All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580, answering your legal questions. Of course, we're going to talk about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman here briefly, but not yet. We're going to get right into the calls right off the bat. As you know, I do a show here in the Mid-State answering your legal questions. You can always join me on Facebook. And, oh, boy. I don't think Shane gave me my list of live reads today either. Bad boy. All right, we'll figure it out anyhow. 540-0580. Dave, you're on the air. Hey, Dave.
Hey, hi, Carl. How you doing?
Good.
In the aftermath of this Zimmerman trial, I was just wondering, and I was discussing that with a friend of mine this morning, how does the castle doctrine affect me? Like when I'm in my house and I'm sitting on my couch, should I have a gun near me in case somebody breaks that bay window and comes in and gets me?
Well, I mean, let me put it to you this way. If your 4-year-old sitting on the floor playing, you probably shouldn't have the handgun sitting on the coffee table waiting for somebody to break in, right? So there's a balance there. The short answer is under the Castle Doctrine, and this is where things get confusing. People, for some reason, think the Trayvon Martin case has something to do with the Castle Doctrine, and the answer is it doesn't, because he was on the ground with somebody on top of him when he shot. Okay? Under the regular law of self-defense, before any Castle Doctrine was passed in Pennsylvania or any other state, under the common law right of self-defense, if you can't retreat, you may use deadly force. If the guy is on top of you, beating you up, then you cannot retreat. Therefore, you may use deadly force. No Castle Doctrine required. Okay? So I don't know why everybody keeps calling it a Castle Doctrine case, except that we all did that early on when the news media picked up on it. But now it's clear that he was shot while he was on top of him. Therefore, Zimmerman couldn't have retreated, so it's not Castle Doctrine. What the Castle Doctrine says in Pennsylvania is you have a presumption that deadly force is required when somebody breaks into your house, okay? That's important. The government not only has to disprove self-defense, but they have to now overcome the presumption that you were defending yourself. On the other hand, the Castle Doctrine also gives you the right to stand your ground in any place you're lawfully entitled to be and not retreat if the other person brings a deadly weapon and you see it. Otherwise, if you don't see a deadly weapon, you still have to retreat if possible.
Even if you're on your own couch in your own living room?
Well, no. In your house, it's different. I just told you that. In your house, you don't have to retreat in your house. You've never had to retreat in your house in Pennsylvania.
I see. Well, I just moved to Pennsylvania a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I'm getting used to this, but I don't have any children, just me and another adult.
Well, then you can keep a gun around, and then the other adult might shoot you someday in a fight, maybe. I don't know. But the short answer is you can certainly keep a gun around. And in fact, when I was not having a child in my life, I routinely had loaded handguns stashed in a few different places. And in my one closet, you could just pull on a piece of strap fabric if you knew what it was, and down comes a combat shotgun ready to go.
Did you ever see that movie Fargo?
Yeah.
And you remember the way that the maniac broke in that bay window, the front window, and came after that lady? And that's what bothers me. You know, sitting on the couch watching TV, and somebody knocks the whole window out, and you know that's what bothers me. That's why I think I probably should have a gun nearby, because having it upstairs in the drawer isn't going to help you.
It doesn't do you any good. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, my friend.
Thanks a lot.
All right, good luck. 540-0580. Mike, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yes, sir. I have a property with someone, joint tenants with rights of survivorship. And I wanted to know if I could get out of it or they get out of it, or how do you go about getting out of it? Sell it? What if they don't want to sell?
All right. Repeat this. You own what with joint right of tenancy?
Two properties.
Okay.
With man and female on them, and joint tenants with rights of survivorship.
Right.
I did a quit claim deed, added her name to them, and now I think I want to end the joint tenancy. And
well, but now you made her a joint tenant, then she owns half of it, right?
Right.
So is she willing to sign off?
I don't think so.
Well, my friend, once you gave her half, you can't take it back.
Well, I know, but can you say, well, we have to sell it since one of us wants to get out of it, or no?
You can force a sale of it, yeah. If she won't agree to sell it, you can force a sale of it. It's called a partition action.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, because one is a rental property that she's not even cooperating on, and another is a vacation house that she's using, and it's like I'm being cordial with her, but it's like I just want to end it, so I can force a petition of action then.
Yeah, it's called a partition action, and you go to the court and you say, hey, I don't want to own this piece of real estate with this person anymore. And if she's smart, you guys go list it with a realtor and be done with it, right?
Right.
But if she's not, then the judge will eventually auction it off.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. Hey, thanks for your time, and I can call you in Carlisle.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've done a lot of these over the years.
Okay, thank you,
All
sir.
right, take care, man.
Have a great day. Bye.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Danny in Dillsburg, what's going on? Hey, Danny.
Hey, I'm driving right now. I have a little bit of reception. We have a partnership, LLC lawyer for the agreement.
Oh, you're cutting in and out, buddy. Well, Danny, I don't know. That was a good question, whatever it was. Well, let me just tell you guys, RJ Gold, and he's helping me out here. If you need to liquidate an estate or business, I recommend you call RJ Gold Auctions. He can buy outright or sell your items at auction. RJ Gold can be reached at 645-0061. He purchases outright items such as medals, pins, patches, tokens, awards, and badges, and most historical collectibles. He can pay you right away. RJ Gold, 645-0061, 3712 North 6th Street in Harrisburg, PA licensed auctioneer number AU005798. That's RJ Gold. And make sure when you call me, tell him Carl sent you. Again, the number is 645-0061. So if you need some extra cash, give him a call, or you want to know when he's having his next big sale, give him a call. Elaine, you're on the air with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Yes, good afternoon, Carl.
How are you?
Good. I see in the paper all the time that they're having sheriff sales in the area that we live in. And could you explain that to me, what it means, and how far along is the foreclosure process?
Well, there's two kinds of sheriff sales. There's sheriff sales of personal items, okay? But we'll leave that alone for a minute. We'll assume you don't want to buy somebody's beat-up old colored television set. And instead, you're most interested in buying a piece of real estate. What happens is after the foreclosure action has been won, there's a judgment entered already. Then you may go to the sheriff and list the real estate for sale. When you buy a piece of real estate at a sheriff's sale, you take it subject to any of the potential pitfalls with the title, okay? So you go to the sheriff's sale, and usually end up bidding against the bank, by the way, because the bank's not going to let it go for a lot less than what's owed on it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Right? They'd rather make sure that they end up owning it than you. If $80,000 is owed on a $150,000 house at the sheriff's sale, the bank's not going to let it go for $15,000.
Okay.
They're going to bid up to at least what they're owed if they can. So the bank's attorney's almost always there making sure that the bank ends up with it. And I think they actually changed the rules to make it even easier for the bank to, in the last year or two, to make it even easier so that if the bank's lawyer's lazy and forgets to show up, they still have some protection. Imagine that. Their lobby's really good, right? So
certainly is.
So anyhow, what you should do if you're going to approach sheriff's sale the right way is you get the list ahead of time. And then you go and try to figure out what's going on with all the properties. Well, if you're not familiar on how to do a title search and the issues, you have to be careful. A lot of the guys and gals who do sheriff sales routinely will go to the courthouse and do their own title searches. So they learn how to do them efficiently, and they go through and they do every property so they know exactly what they might be looking at. And then they know. So if you're ever at a sheriff's sale or a tax claim sale for that matter, and you're like, why is nobody bidding this place up? It must be a real bargain. It means one of two things. Either they've physically seen it and it's decimated, or they know that what problems you're going to take it with when you buy it. You could accidentally buy yourself into an environmental problem as well. Anyhow, long story short is once you kind of know about the history of the property's title and their general condition, then you can go to the sales, the auction, and bid on them. The other thing you can do is instead of waiting for the sheriff's sale, that's an opportunity perhaps to go to the bank or the defendant in the mortgage action and try to work out an opportunity to buy it there as well.
Is after a foreclosure then?
Correct. Or a tax. They do tax sales as well.
Okay.
Although that wouldn't be technically a sheriff's sale. There are also judicial sales. Those are the best place to buy a property. That's after it hasn't sold through the regular tax sale. Then you get a judicial sale, and those come free and clear of all liens. I got to go to break.
Thank you very much.
540-0580. All right, we're back. 540-0580. I tweeted that I was going to have Edward Snowden on to tell us what the NSA didn't want to know at 1:15. Of course, obviously, that was a little bit of a spoof. I just wanted to see if the signal still went out across the air and whether or not black helicopters descended upon the HP 580 studios. But alas, the NSA probably knows exactly where he's at and who he's talking to right now because they're listening to you on your cell phones right now. Oh, we don't actually listen to your individual calls unless, one of our analysts happens to be at his desktop and just wants to look up his neighbor, his uncle, a Supreme Court justice, or maybe even the presiding trial judge at the Zimmerman trial, right? That's all the things we're reading on the internet right now. Actually, there was people who were making a big deal of the fact that the judge colloquied Zimmerman on not wanting to testify. That's done routinely in court when a client, some judges don't do it at all. Some judges always do it, and some judges just do it in some cases. But generally, when I go into court and my client is not going to testify, out of the presence of the jury, the judge colloquies, which means has a discussion with, fancy word, the defendant to say, hey, what are you doing? Do you realize it's your absolute right to testify or absolute right not to testify? And it's your choice and your choice alone and not your lawyer's. The reason for that is defendants have a habit after they lose a trial of coming back to the court and going, well, my lawyer told me I had to testify, or my lawyer told me I couldn't testify, or my lawyer said I shouldn't testify and I wanted to, and he told me he wasn't putting me on the stand. So to prevent all that hullabaloo after the fact, judges like to colloquy the defendant. Some other judges don't do it because they don't feel it is appropriate because the defendant may feel pressure. Now think about this one. Here's the overlay. The client has said he doesn't want to take the stand. And then the judge gives him this stern discussion about, well, you sure that's what you really want to do? At least that's how he takes it, and starts going, well, the judge must be telling me. And I've talked about this on this show before during a guilty plea, for instance. Sometimes when a judge is trying to be extra protective of the record or make sure the defendant really understands their rights, the defendant starts second-guessing his or her guilty plea going, well, I think the judge is trying to tell me not to plead guilty because they keep talking about trials and picking jurors and how I'm giving up so many important rights, and am I sure I want to give up my rights? And then they start going, well, I think the judge is trying to signal to me something. And the answer is no, the judge isn't signaling anything to you. But some judges don't like to colloquy the defendant because they believe that may cause a defendant to switch what they truly want to do because they're getting questioned on it. But I've never had an issue like that. And usually lawyers prefer a colloquy of their defendant, not a extensive, angry colloquy of your defendant, but a nice one on the record simply so that you don't have the problem of your client who's now sitting in state prison for 15 years trying to give you an issue. Ron, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on? Hey, Ron.
Okay, hi, Carl.
Good. What's going on?
Always enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just curious, and obviously you've already stated a few things, but if you were following the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman trial much, and there's an attorney named Mark Levin, I'm sure you've heard of him, that kind of said some pretty insightful things about the judge, and I just kind of wanted to know your take on that whole trial.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Well.
I know it's hard to say briefly on that one, but
let me ask you this question: tell me what you heard about what Mark Levin said, because I'd be curious. I mean, I heard some of it too, but help the listeners out here.
Well, actually, I just read a brief thing, and it was just that he thought that the judge had done some things that may be improper, and but I didn't really get to read much extensively on it. So
yeah, he has called out basically. And I'll give you an example. It's in today's news, okay, and I posted it on my Facebook page. The prosecutors fired the guy who leaked. Nobody likes leakers these days. They fired the guy who leaked that they were hiding evidence from the defense. So this was a guy who worked for the prosecutors, did the technical work, and became aware that all the material he'd removed from Trayvon Martin's cell phone, which included pictures of Trayvon with guns and drugs and texts suggesting criminal activity and things like that, had been withheld from the defense. And at the eve of trial not too long ago, that was discovered because he went to a personal lawyer, and said, I believe I could be personally responsible for suborning a miscarriage of justice here because I'm aware of these things, and my employers, the prosecutors in this case, are not turning it over even though it appears they are supposed to.
Could that be a mistrial then?
Well, what happened was they did turn it over at the very 11th hour, and of course the judges said you can't use most of it. But here's what happens, and this is exactly what the government did in a high-profile trial I was in. Dump everything on the defense attorneys on the eve of trial so you don't have time to research it, develop it, and see where it leads, okay?
Right.
I mean, they had the chance to do that, but then they don't want you to have the same chance. So what they did was they held on to this stuff, and only when they were caught with their hand in the cookie jar, because this guy's lawyer then went to the defense's lawyer, and then they went to the judge, did the prosecution turn it over. And, of course, she denied a continuance on that basis. and then said, well, we're not even going to get into whether it was prosecutorial misconduct until after the trial is over or not. So there shan't be any sanction. We shan't tarnish the prosecutor's image in any way or let the jury on to that they might have actually be dealing dirty in this case.
Oh, that's wrong.
Right, that's what I think, too. So you've got all those things. So you know what they did to the guy? They fired him on Friday. After the case went to the jury, he gets a letter that says, you're fired. And why is he fired? Because he leaked that his bosses were hiding evidence in the Zimmerman trial. Right?
There's a lawsuit.
So, well, yeah, I'm sure it's a whistleblower lawsuit, but here's the deal. What's the message? What's the message to all the little guys? If you work in a state police crime lab, if you work in the district attorney's office and you find out your boss is hiding evidence or cooking the books or doing something in a trial to convict somebody unfairly or at least denying them a fair trial, you're supposed to look the other way because otherwise you're going to get fired. That's the word on the street, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems in the trial. Also letting the district attorney after, closing arguments add a new count or close of evidence add a new count. Really should have been done earlier if it was going to be done so that the defense could try their case around it.
How do they prepare for that?
What the judge did was basically give the government a bone and say, oh, it looks like the defense has made some strong arguments on this murder, too, with this self-defense angle. So I'm going to give you a back door for you to try to make sure you can still get a conviction. And then we've learned this week that the Department of Justice was down there, the Obama administration, but our Department of Justice through Eric Holder, spending money on rallies and organizing protests in this trial, whipping up public opinion against Zimmerman.
Yeah, I read that.
Completely inappropriate. And as we know, this prosecution wasn't brought until sufficient political pressure was created that the state of Florida bowed to it and decided to do it. Otherwise, this poor guy would have never been charged in the first instance.
Yeah, didn't the original sheriff who didn't want to bring charges because there wasn't a case he felt fired or something?
Yeah, they fired him. Then after they got this thing back, they somehow got him reinstated, I think, because obviously they really couldn't fire him for this, for exercising what I would consider to be very sound discretion.
Yeah.
So listen, here's and let me just tie this into the whole Snowden thing here for a second.
Yeah.
We've got this whole back room going on in government right now, okay? This whole back room going on where we have a grand jury proceeding process here in Pennsylvania, but they can't tell us what they did. They can't show us what they did. And one grand jury judge and the state attorney general's office can know the truth, but you just have to trust them. Just trust them, okay? Just like the government now goes in front of Congress and lies about what they're actually doing or not doing, and then says, well, national security requires us to lie to the congressman. Well, so you have no overview by the legislative branch. Well, now in this trial, we've got all these outside pressures coming to bear, and whether or not this judge is truly ruling from her heart and her intellect, or whether she's bowing to the pressure as well, going, oh, but I've been told that if there's an acquittal, we're going to have a race riot, so I need to make sure, whatever I can, to make sure that he still gets convicted of something, Is that going on? The answer is probably not, but we live in an environment now where we can't be sure because all the way down from the President of the United States comes the pressure.
Yeah. And tremendous pressure from the media, too.
And if you go on Twitter, if you want to do something really interesting, go on Twitter and follow the commentary on the trial because you can just use like hashtag Zimmerman trial and you can see in real time what people are posting. And look at this reminds me of the O.J. Simpson case. There is definitely a huge racial divide in how people feel about this case. African Americans as a whole on the Twitter feed are pretty sure that Zimmerman should be convicted. A lot of other folks on the other side, and there's clearly a racial divide if you just look just at the Twitter feeds. Okay.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind what the relative percentage of the population is of minority and Hispanic. And now he's a white Hispanic, by the way. I don't know what a non-white Hispanic is versus a white Hispanic, but apparently, according to the media, we now have distinctions. It reminds me of, we're getting like in Latin America for many years. There's 18 different ways to divide up somebody's ethnic history.
Well, there's something that really has really surprised me, and that is. There are several very large Latino groups, La Raza being, I'm not sure, but I think that's the student one, and there's some others. and they've been virtually silent on this. I mean, if there are riots, race riots, if he gets a very minor conviction or nothing at all or acquittal, I think there's going to be a lot of trouble between the black and Hispanic groups, but I'm surprised that they haven't spoken up. Geraldo is the first one I've actually seen.
Well, actually, I'm going to give the Hispanic groups credit. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give them credit for saying it isn't a racial issue.
Right.
And for saying that this is just about what happened between two men, one who happened to be black and one who happened to be a light-skinned Hispanic, and what really happened. And
but the only thing is that because the other groups like Al Sharpton and all these others, and even the BET guy and his big mouth, I don't know if you've seen that, which I responded to, but at any rate, they are making it a racial issue, so I'm surprised the Latinos haven't responded by saying, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? This is,
Yeah, and I understand that, and maybe there should be some response. On the other hand, the best way to get race out of politics and race out of the law is to stop making it an issue. Yeah. And the only thing we can do is say to that, I think sometimes maybe the better argument is to say, you should not make race an issue, therefore we won't either. But if you guys are going to make race an issue, we're just going to keep saying it's not an issue, but we're not going to do it from a racial standpoint. But I do find it just interesting that the media has worked so hard. I guarantee you that if we quizzed a third of Americans, they'd probably swear up and down that Zimmerman was white and not even know that he's Latino.
Yeah.
Now, and that's also because his last name's Zimmerman. He sounds like a German.
Right.
All right, my friend.
He was related to Adolf.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right, man. Take care. 540-0580. Carl Rominger will be back.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Well, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Mark, you're on WHP 580 with Carl. What's going on?
Hey, Carl. Thanks for your time. Hey, I'm working with a purge title. Here's what I think I know about it. I think what I need to do is I'm in Lancaster, go to the Lancaster County Courthouse, get the appropriate form or paper, fill it out, and then I have to go in front of a judge and explain to the judge how I obtained this vehicle and so on and so forth. And then the judge makes a determination of whether or not everything's legitimate, which I'm sure everything is. Otherwise, I never would have gotten involved with this. But,
okay.
The paperwork, is that something I've talked to an attorney. It's really expensive. In the past, what I would do is just I could send out of state and get a title from out of state, and it worked well. But that's all changed over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to do the paperwork by myself, is it something that's realistic, or am I going to get bogged down?
Well, I mean, the paperwork to do it in a court with a judge, there really isn't a piece of paper, if that makes sense. You have to file a petition with the court that basically says, here's the situation, here's what I want to do, Judge.
Okay.
And so in that respect, there's not like a form to fill out to file with the court.
Okay.
It's and how you title it. I'm not sure who the respondent is there. It might just be in Ray, a white Ford Chevy.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said before, I'd send out of state, and then I would get an out of state title, take that to PennDOT, and then I would just get a PA title. But it's like I said, it's all changed, and is it something I guess I'm just coming back to my initial question. I mean, can I do this? Can I petition the court?
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't.
Okay.
I don't see why you couldn't. So I just wouldn't know how to describe the form of it to you, except to say, just the same way I write a lawsuit. Basically, you're going to write a petition, and it's going to have in it all the essential facts. Here's this vehicle. Here's what I want to do with it. Here's how I got it. And here's what PennDOT needs, an order from you, Judge.
Yeah.
And then you do an order. And if you go to the PennDOT website or talk with PennDOT directly, they may be able to tell you exactly what they need the judge to order.
Okay.
That usually pays. Now, see, it's a little bit of a cheat when you're a lawyer, and what I mean by that is I can call the other counsel. So a lot of times if I'm dealing, like, say, with the state police on an issue, and like somebody's gun rights or something, I can call counsel over there and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Is that what I should file? And he'll say, no, you're wasting your time and my time. I don't want to have to deal with that. What you should file is this. And then we can have a real hearing over it. Or there's no way you're going to win that ever, and let me tell you why. I have a case that says that, so I'll just send it to you now. And people may go, well, why is the one lawyer helping the other lawyer out? Well, what we're doing is helping everybody out, because his client, the state police, or the agency for whatever it might be, or PennDOT, doesn't really want to pay him to go to court to defend something frivolous, right?
Right.
And you don't want to pay me to do something frivolous. So the lawyers try to hammer out realistically where we're at. And, of course, here it's not
the right thing gets done.
Right thing gets done. It's not two individual parties who are just having a fight over spite fence either.
Well, see, now I was given a suggestion to contact, like, the four previous owner's name is on the title. Like I said, I had the title, but it wasn't notarized by the previous owner when he sold it to the person I bought it from. That's how stuff was done back then. It's an old vehicle, and actually it's a pre-1972 title, which of course all the titles before 72 were wiped out in the Hurricane Agnes flood.
Right.
But the suggestion I was given when I went to the Notary Public was to contact the previous owner. His name is on the title. Of course, he's long since gone. And I went down through the phone book and I tried to contact everybody from the area that he was from. And of course, I came up with nothing. If I could just find him or find the person that had power of attorney to his estate, then I'd be home free. But that's just there's nobody around. There's just. So it seems like I have to go in front of a judge with this petition as you're talking about, and then pretty much the judge just, I'll contact PennDOT like you were saying too.
Yeah, and what the judge will usually do is have a little hearing, put you under oath, right?
Right.
Because that creates the idea that you're probably telling us the truth because there's a real penalty now.
Right.
And later if it turns out you weren't and somebody can prove it, you might be in trouble. But the point is that creates a verification procedure because that way PennDOT can rely on the judicial order, and if somebody else comes back and says, well, what happened to my car?
Well, it's a motorcycle. It's not a car.
Right, okay, motorcycle, right. What happened to my vehicle?
Yeah.
Well, PennDOT says, well, judge extinguished your rights, and then they can come back and find out, what you said. And it's pretty frequent that these things happen. I mean,
Okay. Well, like I was saying before, it just in the past, but prior to the old green titles, prior to 71 or 72 is when Agnes was. Prior to then, you could send out a state. Now, after 72, the state wouldn't do that because there was documentation, I guess, was there. It was easier to the state had a better record of it. But
right.
This is just the last time I did this was like in, I guess, 98 or 99, and that it was only a couple $100, But now it's not as sure to send it out of state, and that's why I wanted to check and see what's up with with the Burge title. So okay, all right. Well, I'll start with PennDOT, and then just see what I guess I'll go to the courthouse and see what's involved there, and if it's something I can't handle, I'll give you a call.
All right, keep me apprised.
Okay.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Hey, thanks, Carl. Bye.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Billy.
Hi, Carl.
Yeah.
Hey, question for you. I have a small pistol always kept in the glove box of my car. Well, about 3 days ago, I went into my car just to take it out and clean it, and it's missing. What are my responsibilities and my liabilities towards it?
Under Pennsylvania law, there's no mandatory must report a stolen gun, okay?
I can't prove it was. I do believe it was, but it's missing. So it wasn't like my car. I'm saying my car window wasn't broken or something like that.
I would go to your local police department, and if you don't have a local police department, it's the state police.
Okay.
If your municipality is living off the fat of the state, so to speak, so you go to your local police officer and you give them a report. Here's my gun. Here's a description. And if you have the number, obviously it helps.
I do, sure.
And report it missing, and say, I'm not certain, but I would think it was taken because nobody should have had access to it.
Yes, sir.
They might ask you some crazy questions like, well, did you leave your car unlocked and that sort of thing?
Right.
And the answer is going to be, well, of course not. I had a gun in it. And I would counsel against leaving a car unlocked with a gun in it because there may be an argument when two kids shoot each other later that somehow you negligently gave them access to a firearm.
I see.
Whereas if the car was locked up, you can't expect somebody to break into your stuff.
Right.
Okay. So anyhow, after dutifully explaining to the police that you always keep your car locked with the gun in it, if you had your gun in it, and they can give you some guff, but I don't think there's an issue here. Like, wow, why do you keep a gun in the car? Well, because I have 10 guns and I want to keep one in my car. None of your business, all right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
But once you report that way, if that gun shows up somewhere, they'll be looking for it and it'll work its way back to you, which is also nice.
I got you. Okay.
All right.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it, man. Love you.
Now, technically, you don't have to tell anybody, right?
Okay.
So I want to make sure you know that. On the other hand, if that gun gets used somewhere and that number comes back to you because it's registered to you, and of course the state police do keep a registry, even though our Supreme Court doesn't call it a registry.
Understood. Then they're coming looking at me first.
Right. You're going to be the first guy that's suspected of shooting somebody. And when it turns out to be a girl you used to date, then you're never going to be believed.
Understood.
All right.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Again, your show's great.
No problem. Thanks. 540-0580. We're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk to Dennis and Natasha.
Return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Welcome back. Let's see. So, once in a while when listeners are far-flung, they let me know how far away they are and they're listening. So far, the farthest I've got is Maui. And I mean Maui like Hawaii, like Magnum PI territory. When I think of Hawaii, I'm going to be very disappointed that there's no Magnum when I get there. But I still love that show. And, has anybody figured it out? Is Robin Masters really Higgins? Do we know? Did we ever get an answer on that? I would like to know. I have all kinds of questions today. Anyhow, 540-0580. I want to remind you guys, if you want to hear the Carl versus police officer debate, go to RomingerLaw.com. It's the first thing up under the news there still. Braxton Diddy was kind enough to come on the Durgan show. I think he subsequently hosted it as well. And we did a little debate about police and lawyers, and it was pretty good, I think. Also, I might try to get my mom in the next hour, see if we can get a new recipe out of her, because we haven't had a recipe in a while, and I think she owes us that. Right? Owes it to me. Hey, Mom, I'm 40 and I'm moving back in. I want to let you know. By the way, you have a recipe? Yeah, she'll love that. Dennis, you're on the air. What's going on? Hey, Dennis.
Hey, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
What's going on?
About 5 years ago, my father-in-law's house burnt down. He took the money and some of the money, and he bought a house, and he put it in my wife's name mainly because he was in fear of the IRS coming after him for not filing taxes, and he didn't want to lose it. So the house is in my wife's name. My wife and I are getting a divorce. So my question is, do I get half the house because it's in her name and it was acquired while we were married?
The short answer is it's presumptively marital property. And courts struggle with this issue when somebody comes in and says they're really holding the property for the benefit of somebody else. So I would say you can make a big issue out of it and you might prevail, because I'm sure that your wife's not going to want to testify that she was part of a scheme to defraud a government agency.
Right. She'll what would you call it? It's not an inheritance because he's still alive. And I was just curious about that. I do have an attorney right now, and I
think you can make a really strong play for it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carl. Appreciate that very much.
All right, boss. Yeah, I remember a case years ago where the guy he was in the middle of his own divorce, so he put like $200,000 in his mother's name in an investment account. And, of course, after he'd finalized his divorce, but before he'd bothered to shake Mom down for the $200,000 back, she died. And, of course, he's floating around trying to say that $200,000 of Mom's money, which was a large portion of her money when she died, by the way, was really his. And, of course, his 5 brothers and sisters were saying, well, that's not really true. I mean, it was in Mom's account, and you wouldn't have gone to the divorce court and said that you would have told the divorce court that was your money, because here's your testimony from your master's hearing where you said this is your net worth. So doesn't think it's yours. I think it gets divided 6 ways. So, you run into these problems. Natasha.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I spoke to my husband. He got a ticket this morning for not having the registration sticker on the back of the car.
Okay.
$112 fine. Now, the question I have, is it worth even going to court to fight that? I mean, registration's valid.
I mean, the answer is if the police officer's willing to give you a break, right? But since he already wrote it, I suspect he's going to say there's nothing to plead it down to. It's like a lowest tier offense as it is, right?
Yeah.
So, and he wrote it, which suggests it wasn't his intent. The answer is you could go to the hearing and ask the judge to dismiss it, and maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Okay.
What's the excuse?
The excuse for not having it on the car?
Yeah.
I didn't know it wasn't on there.
You just forgot to put it on?
Generally, my husband deals with that stuff, and I never look at the back of the car. So, and I mean, he said because of the fact that it's coming up for renewal next month.
Right.
And so he said, you've been driving for long enough without it. But the thing is I heard, funnily enough, I have been pulled over for it before, but I never got a ticket, and I did not know that you could get one. The officer never said to me, you need to have it, you'll get a ticket without it. It was just, oh, okay, and he gave it back to me. And so
well,
had I known...
The short answer is make sure it's on there next time, and it sounds like you already got a couple breaks, which is fine.
Yeah, I know, stupid me.
So now, I have to ask you this, right? So your name is Natasha, and you're from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So have you ever watched Rocky and Bullwinkle?
I'm actually not American, and I never was over here when they had it on.
Okay, well, you're going to have to go on the internet and watch some old, because Natasha and Boris are from Pennsylvania, and they're the foils in the show.
Okay.
So I'm going to guess your husband's name's Boris. Now I find out you're from out of country, so it's even more likely his name's Boris or Block or other European name.
Well, no, he's American.
Oh, okay. That's how you got here.
No, my parents brought us.
Oh, they brought you over.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
been
first
here half
generation.
my life now.
I was born here, but my mom and my dad were not born here, so I'm not more American than you.
So
But
you're first generation.
Yes, I'm first generation. So I'm still working hard. I can watch my grandkids get lazy.
That sounds good to me.
All
I'd
right.
rather be the lazy one. Well,
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
lazy.
me
I
too.
didn't
But
put a sticker on the car, did I? That
well,
was
right,
lazy.
you've accomplished your goals. That's good.
There we go.
All right,
All
Natasha.
right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you answering my question.
All right, thank you very much. 540-0580. Yefe. Jeff, what's up?
Yes, Carl. I've been watching the Zimmerman trial with pretty great interest. And I've said since the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but as it was going on, I thought, man, if this isn't reasonable doubt, I wouldn't recognize it. But I'm not a lawyer, so I thought all along. And the more it went on, I thought, well, that's what it just looks that way. But anyway, on the news today, now they're saying that and maybe you've had a caller. I just tuned in a little while ago that says that the prosecution has fired the IT man who testified that the prosecution didn't give all the evidence over the defense. Okay, now you're a defense attorney. Now they're in deliberations. What's a possible scenario that could come out of this?
Well, here's what happened.
That he's telling the truth and that there was some stuff that wasn't put out in a timely manner or held back or whatever.
The defense got it already, okay? And they got it, but not too long before the trial started, and the judge refused to delay the trial on that basis.
Okay.
But here's the problem. I mean, here's the bigger problem, and I mentioned this earlier, and I'll say it again. So he's in trouble because he refused to cover up for his bosses. He refused to go along with what they did. And if you think for a minute that prosecutors don't hide discovery, now, here's the answer. There's a little bit of gamesmanship in trials, okay? And I'm guilty of it too. Will I take a position sometimes where somebody would say, well, his position's a little unreasonable, or they got to get a judge to kick me in the butt once or twice, whatever. And prosecutors do the same thing, and you expect it, and nobody cares because that's just the way it's done. But there are lines you can't cross. And interestingly, for prosecutors, they're supposed to ethically provide all exculpatory information. It's a little different from a criminal defense attorney. I don't always have to provide incriminating information to the other side, okay? Mm-hmm. But they always have to provide things that are exculpatory, which tend to prove innocence. It's called the Brady Doctrine. The United States Supreme Court established it many, many moons ago. So for them to hold on to this is just purely unethical and illegal. And
one of these so-called experts, when they were talking about this, said that you could actually get, he said unlikely, but you could actually get prison time for doing this.
Yeah.
But,
And so,
by the way, just as an aside, I'll let you go. I thought of you during the trial when they had this the lead detective, and he was questioning Zimmerman. I think it was like the third time or whatever. He said, we got the victim's phone, and this is on well, I'm going to say film, but this is a video.
Mm-hmm.
And Zimmerman said, "Good." I think he threw the guy off. He said, "Good. That'll prove it. I'm telling you the truth."
Right. And see, now, of course, Zimmerman did something we wouldn't account. If he'd hired me like the minute this had happened, I would have locked him down and I wouldn't have let him go on Hannity.
I'm sure any defense attorney would say, "Don't go in there and talk to them."
On the other hand, if you're going to do the police interview, this guy was pretty good, right? And you're right. All the indicia is, and the other thing is, I keep hearing this one. This is what they've dumbed this down to the point where everybody says he was told not to follow him, therefore he wasn't where he was supposed to be. The actual tape, the 911 operator just says you don't have to follow him. We don't need you to follow him.
Yeah.
Not you can't, you shouldn't, don't, stop. It's we don't need you to do it. That's great.
But if you're going to be a neighborhood watch, going back to your car and going home isn't really effective. But that's sort of
I saw
a little the nitty gritty of it, and I understand people say, well, if he'd have stayed in his car, if he'd have stayed home and not gone for groceries. If Trayvon would have stayed where he was, all these ifs have nothing really to do with anything.
Let me just tell you, we call it the but-for test, okay? And so, but for the fact that you ran the stop sign, I wouldn't have had a car accident, right?
Yeah.
But for the fact that your parents had sex, you wouldn't have run the stop sign and I wouldn't have had the car accident.
Absolutely.
And but for the fact that your great-great-grandparents met at the cotillion, you wouldn't have existed and your parents wouldn't have sex and you wouldn't have run the stop sign. So you can use the but-for test to pretty much go all the way back to, and it's really, but for Eve being tempted by the serpent, we'd all still be living in a paradise, right?
Yes. Well, and interestingly enough, when the defense was saying what you got to go by the facts, and the prosecutor in his final, whatever you call when they give their final word,
right? The rebuttal.
The rebuttal part. He says, "Now use your gut and your heart." And I'm thinking this guy just stood up and said, "What the defense says you're not supposed to do." He's pleading for him because I think their case is so weak. Anytime
you hear a prosecutor say, use your common sense, everybody out there, if you're ever in a closing and you hear the prosecutor say, use your common sense, that's an appeal to avoid the facts, avoid the burden. We wouldn't have charged him if he wasn't guilty. Use your common sense. So if you ever hear a prosecutor say common sense or gut or heart, you know what they're doing.
Okay. Well, hey, we could go on about this, but I know you have other callers, and I appreciate your time.
All right, boss. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your questions. Harrisburg Beer and Cigar. Great place to go right over on Union Deposit Road. Stop in, tell them I sent you. Got a $500,000 collection of cigars in there. Absolutely amazing. And, of course, a great beer selection as well. When we get back, we'll talk with Dan about the Attorney General and Barry about some property. See you guys in a minute. Do you have a legal question you want answered? Go to RomingerLaw.com. That's RomingerLaw.com. RomingerLaw.com to get your question answered. Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, coming live from the WHP studios, 540-0580. And yes, that was what you thought it was. Okay, you've got a legal question, call in 540-0580. I'll answer it here on the air. Also want to remind you, we updated our website, RomingerLaw.com. And of course, the show is weekendappointment.com, where you can post your questions, etc. But the law firm website, if you want to see what the attorneys look like, learn a little bit more about me and what kind of services we offer, office locations, etc., you go to RomingerLaw.com. And we have a news feed on there where we put up some exclusive articles. Most recently, we have one on online divorce services and if they're really a good option or not. One of these LegalZoom type divorces. The most recent posting we just put up is Should I Fight My Traffic Ticket? And it kind of explains some of the pitfalls about just pleading guilty. Seems like a lot of folks out there just plead guilty to their traffic tickets, and I understand you don't want to be hassled, but there are a lot of collateral consequences to those, insurance increases. And the biggest thing is, you not only got your first traffic ticket, you've driving 40 years, it's never going to happen to you again, and then you get the second one. Now all of a sudden, you got 2 convictions on your record because if you didn't do anything about the first one, you don't do anything about the second one, you're in really bad shape. Whereas some sleazy, skeezy guy who was smart enough to get an attorney every time he got a ticket and has gotten out of 9 of them, gets his 10th one, and he gets less consequences than you because you thought you were just doing the right thing, sending it in. So anyhow, I can go on and on and on. But we do have a little report there on RomingerLaw.com that you can read about fighting your traffic ticket and whether it's a good idea or not. And, of course, I give you the general gist. We're going to tell you it is. But we give you some specifics in there about points and how it can affect you. We have a report up there that we had on put on Weekend Appointment before. Can the police search my car? And an all-time favorite are my Facebook postings private, because the answer is right there. So if you go to RomingerLaw.com, you can look all that stuff over. 540-0580, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. Frank, you're on the air.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question. When a person dies in Pennsylvania and they have a will.
Yes.
I heard of a case where that will was broken. Now, how, like the people that were supposed to get the interest on the money of the will,
okay,
I heard that they somehow worked it out that they broke the will and they got the money now instead of just the interest that they were supposed to get.
Well, I don't know specifics of what you're talking about, but let me give you an example. Usually we talk about trusts in a scenario like what you're talking about, but if you talk about a will, sometimes wills aren't valid, and sometimes the language in a will is not valid. And so, we do free wills for folks. If you go to weekendappointment.com, you can sign up and get one. And one of the things I tell everybody when we meet in the office is the reason it's important to have a lawyer write the will has to be written right. So if you want to accomplish something, I'll give you an example. Let's say, Frank, you have a Ford F-150 pickup truck that you want your grandson to have, okay? And you put in your will, I leave my 1998 Ford F-150 to my grandson, Bill. And at the time you die, you sold that Ford F-150 and bought an almost identical one, but it's a year later, right? So it's a 99.
Okay.
Well, your will's not going to work. He's not getting that. And if he tries to take it, one of the other guys is going to say, one of the other heirs is going to say, that's not yours. He left you his 98, not his 99.
Okay.
Point is, when a lawyer writes it, he'd write, whatever truck I'm driving at the time of my death, I give to. Or whatever truck or whatever vehicle I own at the time of my death, even broader, if you want to give him any vehicle you own. Point is, you have to be very careful how you write a will. So if you've done them yourself, if you've gotten a kit off the internet and filled it out, or you've gone to one of these websites where you put it in, you're not getting good advice.
Well, I'm sure this guy would have went to a lawyer to have his will written up.
Yeah.
And it just warned me because he had his will written up that these people would get the interest for forever because they didn't want anybody to get the money.
Right.
You just wanted to give the interest away. Now I heard that this organization broke the will and they got their money now. So then that.
Well, there has to be a flaw in the will. You can't just. I mean, there's no reason to break a will, and there's no ability to break a will unless there's something wrong with it.
Okay. Can I ask you one other quick question?
Yeah, and Frank, let me give you one caveat, though. For instance, you can't disinherit your spouse. So if you try to write your wife out of the will, she can take against the will.
No, this wasn't the case.
Right, I know. I'm just trying to say, so there are ways that a will can be, or things can be lined out. So if you're divorced, even though the old spouse is in there, we line them out or pretend they don't exist by statute. But go ahead. What's your other question?
Last year I was down in Virginia. My wife and I were riding along with with her sister and husband. They live in Virginia. And he got pulled over in a small village down there in Virginia, and he was cited for speeding. And this was just going through a little town, one of those deals. And then the officer that pulled us over, he was an officer for that little village. He asked me, I was riding in the passenger side of the vehicle, and he asked me if I had my driver's license on me, and I said yes. Mm-hmm. And then he said, may I see it? Well, I showed it to him. Now, is that normal procedure, or could have I said no, or what?
Well, that's interesting. The courts have actually struggled with this question, but the U.S. Supreme Court has said, and the Pennsylvania courts have come to the same conclusion. So the federal law is, and the law of Pennsylvania is, yes. I don't know about West Virginia law, but here's the answer. The courts have said the driver and the passenger can both be passengers can be requested to give identification and compelled to do so if they have it. and you do have to provide it. States can have statutes, as long as they have a statute that requires proof of or showing your identification. Now, here in Pennsylvania, for example, if you don't have it on you, the police can issue you a citation to, produce a driver's license, for instance. If you didn't have it on you, got 5 days to show that you do have it. But realistically, as long as you check out in the electronic systems these days, they're probably going to let you go. So if you just said, well, I don't have my driver's license on me, but here's my name, date of birth, and social security number, and he checks you in the computer, and these days, of course, you pull up a picture associated with your driver's license photo through what they call JNet or PennDOT's system. That officer down there could probably even get a visual of you and go, yep, he looks just like the guy he claims he is, so I'm probably just going to figure he doesn't have his driver's license on him. They can also require drivers and passengers to get out of cars in Pennsylvania as part of a routine traffic stop.
Yeah, I was just a passenger on the the front seat on the.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law was driving, and I just didn't know. I never heard of that before. First, he asked me if I had my license on me, and then he said, "May he see it?" And I was just furious. I thought, I'm going to call you sometime and ask.
And you know why he does that? Because, listen, here's good police work 101, right? Now, am I in favor of him being able to ask you for your license? I don't think so. The papers, please show me your papers so we see if you can pass through the state or not. I don't agree with that as a political standpoint, but nonetheless, from a legal standpoint, the law is you can. And at that point, good police work is what? Well, run you against it and see if you owe any warrants, if you're wanted anywhere, child's deadbeat dad.
Yeah, I knew where he was coming from, but I never heard of that before. And I complied because I don't have anything to hide or anything. But I just thought, boy, that sounded unusual to me. But then it's really, they can do that then.
Yeah, and I'm only answering from the Pennsylvania and the federal regimes. Obviously, if West Virginia had a protection I was unaware of,
it was in Virginia.
Virginia had a protection that would apply. But, Virginia's also the state that has the crazy high fines on their speeding tickets, so it wouldn't surprise me if they're not very consumer-friendly there.
Uh-huh. So, okay, hey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank.
Bye.
540-0580, weekend appointment. Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on this dreary Saturday afternoon. Sorry about the weather, folks. I'll call Tom Donovan or whoever we talk to around here at WHP and give him a talking to about the weather. Who does the weather around here, Shane? Oh, okay. Well, we'll blame them for this. Tony, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hey, I had a child custody question. Me and my ex-girlfriend split up about 3 years ago, and since that time, she's been in and out of jail, and once again, she's back in jail again for various charges. I guess this time she had not lived up to her end of the bargain as far as her probation was concerned, and I guess she was on the run for several months, and now she's back in custody. I've called a number of times or several different lawyers about going to court, getting full custody, and all that. And every time I talk to somebody, they always say that I need to go through mediation first. I think with her track record, mediation is kind of a moot point, and her being in jail again, I don't see why I would have to do that.
Well, I'll tell you why you have to do that. Because that's just the way they do it. In other words, and when they tell you about mediation, what they're really talking about is a concept called conciliation. See, the court has sort of created a one-size-fits-all program statewide, right? And so most counties have this conciliation process, which is called sit down with a conciliator. Now, I can tell you that a lot of times it's pro forma, meaning, I'll sit down with a conciliator with the other counsel, and, okay, the judge said we have to meet Tuesday at 9 a.m. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. All right, boys, what's going on? My client will never agree to nothing. And the other lawyer says, my client will never agree to nothing either. And the conciliator says, okay, I guess we're done. And then we'll give you a court date to go see the judge. Now, if she's in jail, I can sidestep conciliation with a emergency custody order.
Okay.
Which that creates the emergency steps. They're still going to send you back to conciliation at some point. and say, when she gets out of jail, I'm not going to order what happens when she gets out of jail. I'm going to make you guys sit down and talk about that. But I can certainly put you in the driver's seat, so to speak. And under the new custody statute, which seems to really disfavor criminal matters much more than the old statute did, you probably have an even stronger hand to play.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because up to this point, she's contributed nothing, and not that she had anything to contribute. So
right.
There was really no point in going after her for it, and just the environment that she was in. Granted, she hasn't put up a fight to try and see her daughter and all that. So it's been easy up until this point. But I just knowing that she was on the run, it wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility for her to come grab my daughter and go, and there wouldn't really be anything I could do about it.
That's correct, and that's why you need to have an order in place. What county are you in?
I'm in Lancaster County.
Okay. We can help you down there, not a problem.
Okay.
And, Tony, by the way, I have a gift certificate for you if you want it. It's to Rillo's Restaurant in Carlisle. You interested?
Sure.
All right. Can I put you on? I want to put you on hold. Shane will get your information. We'll mail it out to you. It's a gift certificate. I've got a few of them to give away today. It's Rillo's in Carlisle. It's a great restaurant. You're going to like it. A little bit of a drive for you, but I think it'll be worth it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Hold on, brother. Shane will get your information. Let's see. So, yeah, Tony just got his free gift certificate to Rillo's. I'm going to give a few of those out today, just as I feel like it. That's just the way it is. So don't ask me for one. You're definitely not getting one. Mary, you're on the air.
Hello, Carl.
How are you?
I'm just fine. First of all, I do want to let you know you have a delightful program, even though sometimes it's sad.
Yeah, well, sometimes we don't have the best. Unfortunately, I'm like a doctor. Nobody comes in because they're really happy and excited about something.
Exactly.
Unless it's a pregnancy or an adoption, I guess. Those are the exceptions.
Right. Okay, now before I ask my question, I do have just a short comment. It seems to me like, and I don't know if you'd agree with me or not, but would you agree that attorneys have a somewhat handle on how to keep a better relationship? Don't you think that most problems are because of our relationships?
Yeah, well, how would I explain that? Attorneys are notoriously, sometimes people will tell you, hard to relate to. But one of the things that they teach you how to do in law school is to separate things out into separate issues. And so we're very analytical. So I don't know if that helps us or hinders us, but sometimes it's easier for us. We also tend to be a little bit more cognizant of what we're saying to somebody than other people might be.
Now, that's very helpful. Now, here's my question. I was talking to a friend, and he said that in Pennsylvania, when you call someone on the phone and talk to them, you cannot record it. But if they call you on the phone, you can record it. I thought neither party can record it without the permission.
Yeah, neither party can record without the other's consent on a phone call.
That's what I thought.
Unless, this is an interesting phone call. This would be the exception, right? You realized when you called in that this is going to be broadcast to the world.
Yes.
So you have no expectation of privacy in this phone call.
Yes, but now can you actually replay this recording?
Yes, we can.
Because I know ahead of time it's recorded.
Correct. And you're aware that, and further, you're aware that, I'm letting 10,000 other people listen to us as we talk.
But if you called someone from your program and talked to them, could you record it?
That's the interesting question. The answer is not without their consent. So I would have to, which makes it tough in this state. And that's not every state. A lot of states, I could literally dial you up and be like, hey, we're live on the air. Let's go, and then you'd be like, whoa, caught off your guard. You know what I mean?
Now, are you saying if you're in Pennsylvania and you do that with a state that you can record?
Oh, no, you can't do it from you as a Pennsylvanian in Pennsylvania can't do it. What's weird is people out of state can do it to you, though, right? Because they're not they're in their state doing what they want to do.
See, you clarified everything.
Now, here's the answer, too. The government can record a telephone call if one of the parties consents, okay? But there has to be a consensualization and certain procedures followed. And answering machines and voicemails can record you because you're aware, beep, please leave a message.
Yeah.
Well, you've just consented to being recorded because you recognize that you are being recorded.
Well, thank you, Carl. That clarifies everything.
All right, you take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, 540-0580. Get your legal questions answered. Who's next? Kelly.
Hi, Carl.
Hey.
My question is, I have custody of my grandson. I was given custody through Children and Youth Courts,
Okay.
and we've had him since December. What I'd like to know is, we want to adopt him. My daughter's not willing to, just say, okay. Obviously we need to come in and
Right.
talk to a lawyer. Is that going to be an easy type thing, or?
Well, is that, we're doing a couple adoptions right now that come to mind, and I can tell you, one, the father basically was unopposed, and another, I think the father's going to consent, meaning in the one basically was, wasn't exactly agreeing, but wasn't making any real opposition. Sometimes when people don't consent, but they don't oppose, it's fairly simple. If they want to show up in court, and I actually represented a guy in state prison one time who wanted to prevent the termination of his parental rights, and we were successful. I actually convinced some crazy judge not to terminate his parental rights, even though he was going to be getting out of jail for a bunch of years, and there's some nice stepdad that wanted to adopt the kid.
Yeah.
And, of course, my secretaries are like, you're an evil, bad man. And I'm like, well, that's what I was hired to do. And by the way, I'm paying you with that money. I'm earmarking it for you guys.
Right.
But nonetheless, my point is, yeah, can she oppose it? Yes. But there's a legal standard, and the legal standard involves fitness, and it involves care and their ability to care for the child. And the fact that Children and Youth had to get involved at some point usually gives us some glimmer of hope that it won't be that difficult. But
she's homeless, and there's all different horrible things behind it.
Yeah, and so what we would do, quite frankly, is sit down with you and just kind of go through the exact facts, which are obviously things we're not going to vet here on the air, and then give you our odds. But the short answer is you never know, because the law does favor the concept that a parent and a child have a certain bond and a certain right to be together. It has to be weighed against the best interest of the children, and so if there is some desire on her part to be a parent, sometimes that can happen. The other thing is, though, and this is what we sometimes counsel, because I've represented people who are in your daughter's position. I've counseled them, why don't you let the grandparent adopt? Because you got to get your house in order. You're so far out there right now. But more importantly, if this kid ends up in the system or somehow ends up out there, in the wide world.
That's not going to happen because we're not letting him go.
Right, I understand that. But I say, if that were to happen, something happens to you tomorrow or something, I don't know.
Right.
It's better nonetheless that it's a grandparent, because if you're going to have meaningful contact, they're much more likely to let you back into that kid's life or keep you in that kid's life than a foster family or stranger is going to.
Correct, yeah.
So, yeah, come see me. I'd be happy to help you. Rob Culling in my office does adoptions on a regular basis. So.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, boy, let's see here. Shane, I got enough time to take another caller, don't I, before I have to go? Oh, yeah, he's nodding his head. Fred, you're on WHP 580.
Yes, sir, Carl. I've been renting to a couple for over a year now.
Okay.
And I come to find out there's another family living with them.
Always interesting. Well, you can do a couple of things. One is you can go to them and say, what's going on?
Yeah.
I like you as tenants, and you've been doing a good job, and you're paying your rent, and I hate to evict somebody because of something silly like letting somebody come and stay.
I already said that, but go ahead.
And if they say, well, we need them to help pay the rent.
Yeah.
Next question is, are they damaging the place, or are they over capacity? I mean, what are we talking about, sardines in a can here?
It's over capacity, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, you might go to them and say, listen, I just can't in good conscience let you stay with this many people here, so I'm going to have to evict you.
Yeah. Just evict a person with the lease, and the other two will go, I guess, huh?
Well, yeah, except that I'd probably get their names, and, if I was going real coy about it, I'd go to them and be like, listen, I need to know who else is here. I need information on them, and then you file against everybody, because unfortunately, now that they're in the door, you get the eviction order for the other people. The constable shows up and says, well, I've got an eviction order and possession against, Bill and Mary, but I don't have anything against Ted and Susan here. And Ted and Susan are like, well, you can't kick us out because the order doesn't have us on it.
Yeah, but they've never had a lease or nothing.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, there's this thing out there called squatters' rights, which isn't technically what we have here. But the idea is, and I'll give you an example. I've had this happen.
Yeah.
Mister, I just need a place to stay, and I'm going to sign the lease, and I can be there tomorrow to sign the lease and pay you the first rent check.
Right.
And you're like, well, I'll tell you what. I'll put the key under the mat, and I'll come get it, and I'll come sign it in the morning. Once that happens, if that guy doesn't sign that lease or give you the first rent check, you still have to evict him.
Yep.
So that's my point. Once their foot's literally in the door, like that old sleazy insurance salesman, you can't, that goes door to door back in the old days. Once his foot in the door, you ain't getting rid of him without a fight.
Yeah, been there, done that. Yeah. I heard Bob Durgan was on Friday night. Did you have anything to do with that?
No.
He was really saying how bad it is for the landlord.
Oh, yeah.
They have no rights and what have you. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Landlord has rights, but unfortunately, they're very tempered.
Oh, yes. Yes, I know what you're saying there.
All right, Fred, I got to go to break.
Okay.
Where you from, Fred?
Right, bye-bye.
Hey, Fred. Ah, well. I was going to give Fred a free gift certificate, but I guess I got one more to give away now. 540-0580. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Hey, Paul Chase, my buddy down in Lancaster, who practices around the mid-state. He's a realtor who does a lot of short sales, foreclosure-type work for people who are underwater on their mortgage or facing potential foreclosures or even are in bankruptcy, but still want to get rid of the property in the above-board manner of selling it if possible. Sent me some statistics from Realty Track that there were only 44 new filings last month in, I guess that's April, for foreclosures, but there was a record in March of 271 foreclosures for Dauphin County. Cumberland County at the same period had 81 new foreclosures in April, most in Mechanicsburg, Carlisle, Camp Hill, and Enola. Lancaster County had 100 new filings last month. Most of them were in Lancaster, with Lidditz, Columbia, Ephrata, and Elizabethtown rounding out the top 5. And York County had a whopping 237 foreclosures filed, most of them in and around York City. So foreclosures are still happening left and right. People are having a lot of trouble with those mortgages. If you're a lot behind, you want to figure out what to do, contact Paul. He works with Caldwell Banker Select Professionals down in Lancaster. But like I say, he travels around the mid-state, and I know him from hanging out with him in the Camp Hill area. So 735-8400, you can get hold of Paul, or just shoot me an email, and I'll hook you guys up. But if you're interested in unloading a house, or you're behind and you want a little help or figure out what your options are, and don't, it's a no-brainer. I mean, he's not going to force you to do anything. Just talk with him. If you want to keep it and you just want to have a backup plan, he's a good guy to talk to. So talk to Paul Chase, 735-8400. And let's see who's next. Linda, you're on the air.
Hello, Carl. Thanks for your great show.
Thank you.
When people call in and ask if they need a lawyer, it makes me think of two situations that I knew about. One was my neighbor got a minor charge and had to go before the district judge. And she even had a friend who was a lawyer who said he'd go with her, but she's like, nah, I'm innocent. And she said till she got done, she got drug over the coals, and the whole time she was thinking, I wish I had a lawyer here beside me. And then one time our family needed a lawyer. We got a name of a good one, and although it was painful to write out the check, it was, I think, some of the best money we ever spent. So people should really consider it if they're facing a difficult situation.
I really appreciate that. And obviously, again, I'm a little biased, but, I just went over and I got my car inspected by Sam and Jerry's Garage in Carlisle. They do a really good job, and I like those guys over there. And, I go over there, and he's explaining to me, well, it's going to cost, this is what it's going to cost, this is what you need. And I'm like, just, you're the expert. You do what you need to do to make sure my car doesn't fail or blow up or the brakes go out, because I'm not the right guy to do that. And that's kind of how I approach things. And sometimes I get a little miffed when I have somebody that comes in to see me and even pays me and then doesn't follow my advice.
Right, that's important.
But nonetheless, I'm like, you did what? Didn't we talk about this? And I mean, and the funny part is that usually makes me more money in the long run. Rarely does following my advice make me less money.
Yeah.
But or I should say, not following my advice make me less money. And I always joke, too, the other thing is most people, and this is the same, I'm sure doctors, and of course you don't want to joke about this, but I'm sure a lot of doctors will say the same thing, which is, people come in with their leg literally falling off, and you go, okay, well, if you'd have come here when this first happened, I could have patched you up, and it would have been a very simple procedure and 99.9% successful. But since you chose to, in my world, sign the contract that you didn't have anybody read, and then go ahead and start, quote, litigating this contract dispute 2 years later on your own, you're now in a position where your discovery's overdue. It's a contract you never should have signed. And a buddy of mine just did that. He and I were in court, and I was like, did you actually sign this thing? And he looks at me and he says, I didn't actually read it. And I said, you didn't read it, did you? Because if you'd have read it, I know you're a smart guy, and I know if you'd have read it. And I just figured it was a standard contract. Anyhow, okay, I can go on and on like that. But no, Linda, I think you're absolutely on the mark there.
Very good. Thanks again for a great show.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And the boy I'm talking about, if he's listening, he's going to be laughing, too, because he knows he should have read it. He didn't even need me to read it. It was one of the contract that was so obviously lopsided. But that's the problem with the fine print, man. They make it really small, and then Shane's nodding his head over there. Shane's like, I don't read 18 paragraphs of fine print. I figure whatever it says, it says. Yeah, right. Exactly. Liz, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi. I was calling. We have a major flooding issue in our neighborhood.
Right.
And it's actually 3 neighborhoods really close together. And what happens is if we get heavy rain in a short period of time, we have like drains in the street and sewer systems that are supposed to collect the rain and take it somewhere.
Okay.
It's not doing its job, basically. The drains are totally backing up, and then what happens is it starts to flood the street, and it floods our front yard. I mean, it happens not just to us, but our neighbors, too.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a problem because it blocks the road. It's dangerous. It's causing sinkholes. It's flooding people's basements. Like, I know myself and my neighbor, we don't get water in our basement unless our front yards are flooded.
Okay.
Regular rain, it can rain for 3 days straight, and we have no water. But if it rains heavy and it floods the front yard, we have water. And, we've talked to the township. It's been happening for about 4 or 5 years. And numerous people have complained to the township. And the township has told, the township manager actually sent me an email in 2009 and told me that they were doing a study on how to fix this problem. And so my main question is, I'm thinking you should be beyond the study phase
right.
by now. Is there, any point to any kind of litigation or any kind of, class action thing that could make them move faster?
Well, the short answer is, if you'd hired me, let me tell you what I would do. First thing I'd do is get hold of the township, talk to the solicitor, maybe talk with the engineers over there, and find out where they're realistically at and what's going on. If there's answers are satisfactory, then we stand down. If the answers aren't satisfactory, we have to analyze the legal issues. A township can be sued, and things can be forced upon them in certain circumstances. However, Pennsylvania recognizes a doctrine called the common enemy doctrine, and water is considered to be the common enemy of the people, meaning that if I put some blacktop on my land and all the water starts running off just kind of down the slope and onto your property, hey, that's your problem because your water's the common enemy. Now, this doesn't take into account environmental regulation. This doesn't take into account other kinds of zoning or codes, etc. This just takes into account the general common law. But nonetheless, because water's the common enemy, you've got to show that the township has done something negligently to artificially channel the water or artificially concentrate the water onto your land. And so if we could show that they built a big pipe and it's discharging a certain way, which is causing all these problems, then that's the easy one. Otherwise, it might just be a political solution, which is to get everybody together and just get to all the township meetings and start saying, we need an answer, we need an answer, we need this done, because otherwise we're going to vote Liz for township supervisor.
Yeah. And we've had some pressure because, my neighbor is a lot more active about it because he has no kids and he's older.
He's got nothing to do, is what you mean.
He's gotten, people to the meetings, and he's had a lawyer talking to them, but it doesn't. I mean, they just don't seem to care. Like they give us a good answer, and then they do nothing.
Right.
Basically, what we're seeing anyway, and then they've kind of stopped answering us. Like I've sent a couple more emails and no answer, and we've left messages and no answer. Like they don't want to talk to us about it anymore.
Well, and that's the other question is depends on how much money you want to spend. But I have been hired before to go to township meetings with folks simply to help them, quote, address the township, end quote. Hey, they're here. They have a lawyer. Here's what they want to know about. And they're going to have me follow up and see what you guys are doing. But that costs money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, that was one of the very first cases I was involved in, Shane. Involved a township and a farmer and water and a lot of rain. And it's weird because, we've had all this rain this year, right? Well, the one that I was involved in up in Crawford County years ago, they had historically high amounts of rain in like a 1 or 2 week period where just water was just inundating the area. And PEMA was out there writing their low-interest loans and everything, and that's when all these issues come to light because most of the designs and problems with the flooding and the water and the channeling when it's the normal water flows don't come to bear. But when the 100-year flood is on, like it is in the Mississippi, all of a sudden we're opening levees we never opened before, and we're flooding areas that have never seen flooding before. And that's exactly what's happening, of course, right now in central Pennsylvania because we've had a very, very wet couple months with record set in April, and now we're supposed to get rain the rest of this week. Now the water table, the water drains well around here, but the water table's very high, so I expect to hear more water-related problems coming in the law office here. All right, guys, I got to go to break. I'll see you in a minute. 540-0580. Oh, yes. I love this song. I think sometimes we got to get All My Rowdy Friends Have Settled Down by Hank Williams Jr., though. That's how I feel sometimes, when I try to rouse the boys to go out drinking, and they're like, oh, I got to go home. I got to do this. You got to go take care of your kid. Oh, boy. All right. I'm my only rowdy friend I have anymore. At least I'm my own best friend.
You're the only friend.
Ann, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
Did you say Ann?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I've been waiting for it's my turn. First, I wanted to say hello and to tell you I think it's wonderful that your station offers a program like you have there going for the people. It's just absolutely, really wonderful.
I give R.J. Harris all the credit for coming up with the idea.
Oh, I listen to R.J. Harris every day. But he's terrific, too, the whole staff. Well, I have really two questions. Number one, I'm parents of a daughter who is going through very, very difficult times. She's a single parent, and I think her house is going into foreclosure. So my first question is, when that process starts, how long is a person allowed to stay in their home while the process is, going through and being worked on?
Well, the short answer is I've held up foreclosures for as long as a year and a half or 2 years, although we would never say we held it up. Obviously we're just asserting all of our legal rights in court because just like a regular lawsuit, a foreclosure requires them to prove things, and it goes through all the normal stages. Now, you have to have meritorious defenses, but here's what's happening. And you ever hear that? You ever hear the term puppy mill? The idea that they have a mill where they just have a million puppies, they're churning them out, and they're all sickly and low quality.
No.
Well, that's a term of well, here's the idea. There's all these foreclosures are, and I just read a thing from Paul Chase a minute ago about the record number of foreclosures going on out there. They're all being done very sloppily, and they had these things called robo-signers most recently heard about where nobody really knew whether everything was checked or not.
Yes, yeah.
We're finding that a lot of the foreclosures, if you just read them over, there's obvious errors in the pleadings, for instance.
Okay.
So the first thing I can do is assert a objection saying, hey, this wasn't signed by the right person, or this doesn't have all the right information in it, or you claim that you sent an act blah, blah, blah letter, but I don't see the actual date or the letter attached. And that alone can tie up the foreclosure for months. So even if you haven't paid your bills, have no great excuse, the other side, you're still entitled to have the lawsuit filed properly. And that
who
alone
does that?
slows things down rapidly. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody into frivolous litigation, because here's the downside to that.
Right.
The other side then occurs more attorney's fees, which potentially become part of any judgment against you, may eat up equity you have in the property, et cetera. So in any given case, what we're going to do and how we're going to handle it's very different. I had another client. We stalled her foreclosure only because we were trying to get part of the loan modification agreement with Bank of America, and it takes them so long to process the paperwork that Bank of America was going to foreclose on her before the other half of Bank of America approved her for the program.
Gosh. So she wouldn't be put out like in a month's time.
No. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you can be looking at months and months, and frankly, want to slow it down. Sometimes we can even enter into agreements.
Oh, okay. Well, now that's comforting to know, because, I mean, it's a very difficult time for her. I feel so sad. She's got, one daughter, so on. But, that's comforting to know that, they wouldn't be put out like overnight.
No, absolutely not. And it's funny. I get people. I had somebody come and see me the other day. They got the act letter that says, we're going to be sending you a foreclosure. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to move. And I'm like, they haven't even filed the foreclosure yet.
When you, when you get something like that, yes. I'm sure,
And it's from our standpoint as a lawyer, since we know how long it really takes, we're like, no, you're fine. But from their standpoint, not having ever had anything like that happen to them. And remember, a lot of people who are getting foreclosed on right now are just good people who never had a legal problem in their life. They just don't have any money.
Right. Well, that's what's happening here. So, and the second thing that I wanted to comment on is right now it has a court case going on because of her little job and everything. But I wanted to just point out this: why can't attorneys, not all attorneys I know will be like this, but why can't they, when they look at the bigger picture of where clients coming from, like their background with hard times and money problems and so on and so forth, and know how, why aren't they more like, I hate to use the word kinder, but more like encouraging, like just getting back to a client because they know that a client is sick with worry and wondering how things are going. Well, why can't they take that valuable time just to give a quick phone call or have a secretary call?
The short answer, and I'll to defend my colleagues and maybe myself once in a while, I mean, we're always putting out fires, meaning we're dealing with whatever the momentary crisis or deadline is. Yeah. But you're right, and that's I actually said this at a lawyer meeting the other night. I said there was a group of us and they were talking about there was a reference that this lawyer had not returned some client's phone call in 6 months, and it was an ethical problem, And somebody said, well, was there an ethical issue there? And I said, I don't know if there's an ethical issue. I don't even need to address that. I can tell you that when I was growing up and I told the guys I hung out with that I was going to go to law school, and they were a little older than me and had some rental apartments and had used lawyers over the years, they said, if you want to be the greatest lawyer in the world, all you have to do is return your phone calls.
Oh, that makes sense. But even if you don't return them all the time and you're wondering how the case is going or what's happening or what went on, just have your secretary call the client then.
And that's where, with modern communication, with emails, for instance, in my office, when a document comes in, we email it to you. When a document goes out, we email it to you. And we answer quick email. In other words, we've been able to use technology to really better communicate with the clients. I originally started emailing things to people to save the postage because I'm such a cheapskate. And then I discovered that people were really happy. They're like, wow, this is great. I get it the same day you guys get it.
Well, it's that idea of connecting and just reassuring your client, okay, we're working on this is happening, or don't worry, but nothing. I mean, this one person, it's just as sad to see.
And part of the problem, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but part of the problem is there's a lot of people in my profession whose people skills are a little challenged. And that's the same of any profession. But in order to be a lawyer, in order to get through law school, you don't have to have a good bedside manner, and you don't have to be kind, and you don't have to be polite, and you don't even have to be sympathetic. In fact, sometimes those traits might not always be desirable in a particular lawyer in a particular case. But I agree with you, and I spend a lot of time telling clients why we're doing what we're doing. And I said, I hope I'm not boring you, but I want you to understand that, here's why we do it the way we do it. And I think people appreciate that.
Well, I just think the connection to reassure a client and not being like they're left out in the dark about, what's going on, just a little phone call, like, don't worry, we're working on this, or something happened or whatever.
Yeah, and I got to let you go, but I'll
the whole time through a case and you don't get that kind of feedback.
Go watch, I'm pretty sure is it Franz Kafka's The Trial? Is it The Trial? I'm pretty sure it's The Trial. And if you go get the movie, it's an old Orson Welles movie.
Yeah.
Okay? Watch that movie. I always tell people, because you'll appreciate this. I always tell young lawyers, you got to watch that movie to understand how clients feel. Because it's about a guy named Kay who's stuck in a legal system with no answers. And if you watch it, you'll appreciate why I tell young lawyers you've got to watch that, because that's how your client feels. And even though you're trying to explain things to them, so it's the trial, Franz Kafka, old Orson Welles movie. Watch it.
So helpful if these lawyers would just,
I know. I got to let you go because I got to take 2 more callers in 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Let's see. Ann, you're on the air.
Ann?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, my daughter is my power of attorney, and she's going into bankruptcy.
Okay.
And she will get my whole estate. She and my grandkids. Now, since she's going to be in bankruptcy, will they be able to take her inheritance if I die, while she's still in bankruptcy?
The short answer is potentially yes.
They will.
Potentially. The long answer is no if you do it right. Come see me, okay?
I better come see you then because I'm really worried.
Yep, come see me. I'll fix it.
Thank you so much, Carl.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Carol, I'll have to take you next week.
Okay.
All right, call me next week. All right, guys. Go to weekendappointment.com. Sign up for your free will. Go to romingerlaw.com. Check out our new law firm website. We're in Lancaster, Chambersburg, Harrisburg, Carlisle, York, wherever you need us to be. We got 10 locations we can meet with you now. Contact me off the air to learn more about that. All right, guys, see you next week. Do you have a legal question you want answered? Go to romingerlaw.com. That's ROMINGERLAW.com. romingerlaw.com to get your question answered. Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580, and they tell me that only one of the phone lines is working, so be patient if you can't get through. 540-0580. I guess Clear Channel didn't pay their phone bill this month. Oh, look, they're trying to take me off the air now. Shade, what happened? You guys pay the phone bill? What happened? Clear Channel out of money? What's going on? No, don't know?
I have no idea.
All right, anyhow. 540-0580, call in. I want to talk to you folks about a videotape I posted on the web. I want to talk to you guys about a lot of different stuff. And if you're a Facebook user, join me on Facebook as my friend. You can see a lot of great commentary there. We've had quite a few people comment on the video. And I want to point something out because I've caught this in a minority of folks who've commented on these things. 540-0580. Shane, can you hear that buzzing? Do we know what that is? Oh, man, this station is falling apart. It's falling apart. 540-0580. I caught this thread on the Facebook where one of these guys is saying, oh, well, you just broke the law because you were drinking and driving and you just talked your way out of it by being clever. Well, first of all, I wasn't drinking and driving. Second of all, you don't have to answer the police's questions whether you've done anything wrong or not. Number 3, you don't have to be drunk to be found guilty of driving under the influence. In fact, in Pennsylvania, and I want everybody to know this, let's take a call here, and then I'm going to tell you how you can get convicted without being under the influence at all. David, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
A member of my family got into a little bit of trouble, and I was wondering, what kind of jail time he could look at for these charges.
Okay.
What he was charged with, I have the docket in front of me, was burglary, theft by unlawful taking, and receiving stolen property.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you broke in somewhere and took something. The lesser charges, receiving stolen property, is a charge where if you have to be in possession of stolen property at the time you know it's stolen, you can be guilty, including the person who stole it. So he's received stolen property, or he retains or dispossesses himself of it. So, assuming that's one of the lesser charges. What did you say the middle charge was?
Theft by unlawful taking.
Theft by unlawful taking is when you take something, movable property of another, and then ultimately, the most serious one is burglary, and that's a felony. Now, how much time he's facing is going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on his prior record, if any.
Well, he did this like 2 months after his 18th birthday. His juvenile record, he had like a couple of fights in school, and they made it disorderly conduct or something like that. But that was all while he was in high school.
Right, but the juvenile record could still count against him. Those juvenile records don't disappear, contrary to popular belief. Number two, depending on whether he burglarized a home or a business, and whether anybody was present at the time.
It was a home.
Yeah, well, he's in big trouble. Long and short of it is a first-time offender could face anywhere from county prison all the way up to state prison and all the way up to a potential, I believe, felony one maximum of 20 years. So it's a serious set of charges.
Mm-hmm.
Burglary of a home is very, very bad because that's how people get shot, killed, maimed, and mutilated.
Mm-hmm.
We think of burglary of a business not equipped for overnight staying as a lesser offense.
Okay.
All right, David?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carl.
All right, thanks.
Have a good day.
540-0580, 540-0580. Call in if you've got a question. But I want to get back to this since we took that call. How can you be guilty of a DUI in Pennsylvania without even being impaired? Well, and somebody's going to laugh at me, but this has actually happened. Okay, let's say you ingest marijuana, but not illegal marijuana, but legal marijuana. And maybe it's medical marijuana in California, maybe it's medical marijuana in New Jersey, or maybe you just take a plane to Norway, you're over there hanging out, and you go to the pot bar, and we'll say you do that on the 2nd of the month. You fly back to America when your vacation's over, 2-week vacation, it's now the 16th. Get out of the airplane, get in the car, drive home, drive around for about 2 weeks. So now you're 28 days out, and you get pulled over. And the cop says, I think I smell alcohol on your breath. Of course, you say, well, I was drinking. And you dutifully answer all his questions. Yeah, I'm coming from the bar. Yeah, I did hit the yellow line once or twice, but I only had 2 beers. And they go and they blow you for alcohol, and you come back as a .01, which makes you way, way down there, almost practically no alcohol left in your system. And the police officer says, well, I want you to consent to a blood test. And guess what? You have to consent to a blood test, or else you're going to lose your license for a year. And then they take the blood test, and he says, his alcohol was low on the PBT, so I'm going to have him screen him for marijuana and marijuana metabolite. And the hospital comes back and says he has no marijuana in his blood. None, 0. But we did catch 7 nanograms per milliliter of marijuana in his blood. 7 nanograms. Well, 7 nanograms. That's about 28 days post-smoking. You'll test positive for 5 or more nanograms of metabolite, inactive. So now you are guilty of the highest tier DUI in Pennsylvania. It's your first offense. You're going to do 3 days in jail. You'll lose your driver's license for a year. Wow, what did you do wrong? Nothing. But by answering the police officer's questions, you enabled him to arrest you. You enabled him to test you. And guess what? You did do something wrong because the legislature has said that the Department of Health can determine whether or not a metabolite of a drug that's no longer in your system, what the levels will be. And they've set it at 5 nanograms. So for a marijuana smoker, you got 30 days till it clears out. Somebody it's going to go, well, marijuana's illegal. No, it's not. Marijuana's illegal in Pennsylvania. It's legal in a lot of other countries. So if a tourist comes over here from another country where it's legal and they don't smoke it and they obey our laws, they can't drive, they can't rent a car because they have horrible metabolite in their blood. Joe, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Joe.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, and I don't even know if this is actual true information, but I heard through the grapevine at the company that I work for, it's a national company, I won't mention the name, but they have a policy whereby they purchase life insurance policies and name themselves as beneficiaries.
Right.
I didn't know if that. I had real problems with that. I have, number one, my question, I guess, is what's that going to do to my regular life insurance policy that I have?
It does nothing.
Okay.
An employer has an insurable interest in an employee. So what they do is they buy a life insurance policy on you.
Okay.
And then they buy it on all the employees. And then when somebody dies, they take those monies tax-free.
Wow. Okay. I mean, all right, so you're Okay.
But I don't know if they closed that tax loophole or not. One of the big utilizers of it were like the Walmarts of the world and big companies. Because here's what happens. If you have 1 million employees, statistically we know how many are going to die in any given year. So the life insurance company would come to Walmart and they'd say, okay, give us $50 million on all your employees and we'll pay out $100,000 per death or something in the year. And then at the end of the year, they would hand back to Walmart, let's say $45 million. So Walmart would give away $50 million and collect $45 million. The life insurance company make $5 million, and they could run these numbers. So with such a large group of employees, they could run these numbers exactly. The advantage is Walmart gets to write off the expense of the insurance. So that's a $50 million deduction, and then take the $45 million tax-free.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Doesn't that seem a little bit unethical or something?
Wait a minute. Wait. What do you mean unethical? What's unethical about it? The government has set the tax policy. They want to take your money, but they've given you a set of rules that will allow you to keep some money. That's what everybody does, right?
They can double dip, though. I mean, isn't it double dipping, though? I mean, in the event of my untimely death, then
it's not double dipping. It's walking around the law. The crazy Congress said you can write it off. You can write off life insurance, and then the crazy Congress said you can take the money tax free.
Well, I kind of detect that maybe you I don't know, maybe partially agree with my I guess I'm just have a little worry about it. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Understand now. There wouldn't be any harm to you.
Yes, sir.
All
I
right.
appreciate your time.
No problem, Joe. But you're right. It's one of these loopholes that Congress created because Congress can't see past the eyeglasses.
Well, it seems like they haven't done that. Yeah.
All
right.
right.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
540-0580. All right, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, show's weekend appointment. Listen, the problem with the phones, apparently they did pay the bill, best I can tell, but I think I got a little workaround here. 540-0580, you should call. If you don't get through on that, I'm going to give you two alternative numbers. 901-6712, 901-6712, and 901-6711. Okay, so 540-0580, but if you want to try to get on one of the other lines, it's 901-6712 or 6711. 901-6712, 6711. That'll come through on the other two lines. For some reason, it's not rolling over, and I guess they're changing the phone system around again. If you've ever been on listening to Bob Durgan, you know how Bob loves it when they play with the phones. Well, I know how he feels. All right, let's see. Sammy, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yes, Dr. Rominger.
Yeah, very few people call me that, but I am a doctor. You're right, JD.
Are you really? Okay, so I'm right. You sound like a doctor, and you're fearless. You take all callers, from what I can tell.
Even you, Sammy.
Huh?
Even you, Sammy.
Yes.
What's the question today?
Yes. I would like to go to an independent laboratory and have my blood analyzed. So I called the laboratory, and they said, "Oh, no, you can't do that. It's my blood, right? It's my body. I would like to know what's in my blood." "No, you got to go to your doctor." But I said I have 3 doctors. I don't want to call them every time. I need, as an example, a PSA. A lot of men have prostate problems, and by keeping track of your PSA, you can avert a lot of complications from cancer.
So who do you have to call?
Well, I got to call my urologist who's in Philadelphia area every time I need a PSA. I mean, that's silly. And I also want to get my cholesterol checked and some other components of my blood.
Now, some of the cholesterol stuff I think you can get done without a doctor's script.
Well, no, I called them and they said no.
But a lot of insurances won't cover it.
Why can't I get my blood analyzed, Dr. Rominger?
I do think, and Sammy, I'm going to let you listen to this because I'm going to free up that phone line, 540-0580, 901-6712 or 6711. We got to use 3 numbers today to get through to all 3 lines, folks. So 901-6712 or 6711, and then, of course, the good old 540-0580. Well, Sammy, the answer is probably your insurance requires a prescription, and obviously a lot of medical testing is controlled with doctors as a gatekeeper. But I'm certain that if you want to pay your own dollars straight up, you could find a lab somewhere that'll do these things for you. Chad, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Oh, hi. That was a very interesting video you posted on your website.
Yeah. Let people know. If you go to weekendappointment.com, up top you're going to be able to watch a video of an actual police stop where the police stop some poor motorist on the street, and some poor motorist just happens to be me. So if you want to check that out, go to weekendappointment.com. You can watch it and talk about it. What'd you think, Chad?
Now, at the end, when he says, I strongly suggest if you've been drinking, you do a U-turn and park your car over on the other side of the road. Now, the cynical part of me says that he can watch you do that, make an illegal U-turn on a highway like that, pull you over for that, and then automatically suspect you for DUI. Is that possible?
Yeah, and what I think he was trying to do, there was a parking lot over there. That's right by the boat launch down on Front Street, up at the end by Fort Hunter. And there, of course, there's a group of fishermen over there watching all this go on. But he wanted me, I thought what he wanted me to do was admit that I'd been drinking by doing an act in exchange for the statement. In other words, if you stole the cookie, go to the living room, young man. And the kid walks over to the living room. You're like, aha, I knew you stole the cookie. And I think that was what he was going to do, is say, oh, you've admitted to drinking. Now I can combine that with some other things and I can arrest you. See, they didn't have probable cause to arrest me to test my blood at that point. I wish they would have arrested me illegally because I would have had a hell of a lot more fun with this. But the point of the matter is he was trying to get there. And this is important, folks. The police are not there trying to do you a favor. And I used that example, if you heard me a little earlier, Chad. By the way, I just put the talk line numbers out here again, 540-0580 or 901-6711 or 12. Call in, folks, and we'll talk. My big issue was he's doing this to fish. And at some point, you could be convicted even without alcohol in your blood. They could determine that some prescription you were on was the basis. They could look at a marijuana or other drug metabolite that you'd legally used. People don't realize that. So I'm not going to do them a favor and let them have a free fishing expedition.
So my other question is what'd you wind up doing?
I just walked off to the side. They were kind of like, and I was kind of like, I'm just going to hang out here. I'll see you guys later. And so I waited till they pulled away, and then I went over to check to see, because I originally was going out to see if anybody was catching any catfish. That was my big purpose.
Now, would that be considered entrapment? I was the one that posted that question on the website.
The short answer is it could be, but probably not. It just gives them it's just dirty pool, but unfortunately I don't think the court's going to do anything about it. The other thing I really want people to pick up on, because somebody else said, well, it sounds like they recognized you were a lawyer right away. Well, the car was not registered to me. And I'm telling you, when he came up to the car, he took my license and registration, which I had ready to go right away, because I know they like to say you fumbled or searched for them. So, folks, get them ready and hand them right to him, which is what I did. And, of course, I could tell his head's like right in the car right away, sniffing. I think I smell alcohol. Where are you coming from? And of course, I knew right away that he could care less if I'd been driving 110 miles an hour or 5 miles over the speed limit. But he never looked at my license. And so first question was, do you know why I pulled you over? Well, that's a famous question. Yeah, I was speeding, officer. That's an admission. You don't know why the police pulled you over, folks. Even if you were doing something wrong, it doesn't mean that's why they pulled you over. It's most likely. But that question you say, no, I don't know why he pulled you over. I don't know what's in his head. And the real answer is he probably pulled me over. I was looking for a DUI, right? So he says that, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, no, I don't know why he pulled me over. Well, you did this. I'm like, well, I guess if that's what I did, you're going to, write it up. That's fine. So Thank you. And then he's like, where are you coming from? And I was like, I'm not going to answer that. I'm an American citizen. That's my right. I was being a little snide, I guess, at that point. And then he says, well, have you been drinking tonight? And I said, no, I'm not going to answer that question either. I mean, I said, no, I wasn't drinking. I said, no, I'm not going to answer your questions. And then he said, this is very important. This is being audio and visually recorded. Well, that doesn't mean crap. Excuse my French there. But that's a line, that's a line of poo that maybe if you didn't know any better, you would think it means something. But just because it's being audio and visually recorded, so I said, that's a point when I said, well, I'd like an attorney. And that's the first time he looks at my license, and that's when you hear him say on the tape, oh, you're an attorney, aren't you? So I have a feeling that if we'd gone a little bit longer and he hadn't figured out I was an attorney, he might have got a little saltier on the video. I'm only guessing. And maybe, the officer seems like a nice guy. Met him in daylight, too, and he seems like a solid guy. But he's doing a job. And he's not there to help you. And the more questions you answer, better things aren't going to get better for you. So, I don't know, Chad. I'm just rambling here. But you got any other thoughts or questions?
No. Thanks for going over that.
Yeah, and I guess the most important thing to remember is this. I get so mad because there's this guy. If you go on Facebook and you read all the quotes and comments on there, and anybody out there who's on Facebook, join up and become a friend of mine, check it out, and read up, comment on it there. I got a lot of comments from people who've experienced similar types of stops where they feel like it's a fishing expedition, and as soon as the police figure out they're not drinking, they just disappear. But there's a few people that are like, well, you should just answer their questions. You've got to, if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to hide. Well, those are the same people that would dutifully report their neighbors for having Jews in the attic, okay? Our job is not to help the government. Our job is not to make it easier on the government to steal our rights. And the issue isn't whether I was drinking or driving. The issue is whether or not I have a right to be free from intrusion by the government. And I just get so mad at people who are like, just answer their questions. The answer is I don't have to. And you shouldn't get mad at me. Somebody's got to test the cops every once in a while. What if they'd have just cuffed me at that point? Well, it'd be good to know that they're out there disrespecting people's constitutional rights. So somebody's got to invoke them once in a while. All right, Chad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see here. 540-0580. And, of course, our alternative numbers today are 901-6712 and 6711. And it figures the day the phones aren't working really well. We're going to do a second hour of the show, folks, meaning we're going to be on from 3 to 4. Now, if you're listening to the radio, you're not going to hear us. But if you want to call in with questions, you want to talk about a topic or anything along those lines, you call 540-0580. And we're going to keep the phone line open from 3 to 4. And what that's going to let you do is continue to ask questions. We'll do maybe a little more long format answers. If you got something you really want to get in depth with, or you just want to comment again, like on this video or something along those lines, we'll have you on. So then that will be broadcast. That second hour will be broadcast as a podcast immediately after. So a little after 4 o'clock, you'll be able to go back and hear the second hour of the show. And what we're going to do each week is try to build a second hour up offline, off the air, which will come as a bonus podcast. And, of course, we'll bring some guests on and things like that. But this is the first time we're doing it. So, again, with the phone lines, we'll live with it. I got to go to break right now, but I got Jason holding. I got somebody else calling in. And when we get back from break, 540-0580 on the two lines you want to try, 901-6711 and 901-6712. Call in here, and we'll see you after the break. Okay, 540-0580, 901-6711, 901-6711. Those are our two talk line numbers, or 901-6712. Folks, sometimes we got to use extra numbers because the rollover isn't working right, so I'll be screaming and yelling and hollering. I could be like, Bob, I'm angry. I'm going to get it. Art, what's going on in here? Jason, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Are you still there, Jason?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. I apologize if you already went over this, but I missed the first couple of minutes of your show. I was wondering, if you do get pulled over, what questions do you have to answer? I mean, I know you got to supply your license and registration, but other than that, what do you have to supply the officer with?
I kind of joke, name, rank, and serial number is it. And so you have to give your name and your license, your registration, insurance information if they ask for it. Other than that, you really don't have to answer anything. Of course, it's always a judgment call. I mean, if you're completely fine and sober and happy and you trust the police, you can just kind of answer everything. And if you think maybe you only had 2 beers and you're going to blow clean, let them, talk with them, tell you where you've been, where you're going, and blow the breath test. And maybe they let you go. Problem is, that's sometimes. Other times you've misjudged how much you drank. Other times the police don't care how much you drank. Because they're going to use one of the alternative ways of proving it, which is the metabolite I was talking about, or this nebulous general impairment. Yes, Mr. Rominger blew a .05 on this BAC, which is well below the legal limit and probably only a beer and a half. But I thought he was physically incapable of safe driving based upon his appearance and his driving on the road and his appearance at the scene of the stop. And then a jury gets to determine, or a judge gets to determine, if the police officer was correct or not. And I was fortunate enough to have a video, I think, that shows that I'm not swaying or having any physical problems. In fact, I think I'm darn tootin' fine on there because I had so little to drink. Over the course of the evening, I'd had 2 whiskeys at the Red Lobster and then 1 glass of wine over like a 7-hour period. So there wasn't enough alcohol in me to cleanse a wound. Point being, though, is... Yes, imagine there's no video, and the cops are like, yeah, he was irrational, he was yelling, he was swaying. And the jury goes, well, why would the officers lie? And boom, you're guilty. So the more information you give them, the more they can use it. The problem is, of course, I guess if you got a bad officer, they're going to not respect your invocation of your rights.
Right. So what my question is, what do you if you say, you give them your name and all your information, and they ask you a question, you say, I really don't want to answer it. And then basically they start browbeating you. What do you do?
You have to do one of 2 things: you either give in or you stand up. And listen, here's the answer. I always get mad at clients who, particularly when they're involved in a more serious criminal matter, and DUI is a serious one, but I'm talking about they're facing years and years in jail. Why would you even talk to the police? Well, he told me I had to, and I do get a lot of reports from clients that the police will tell them, you don't need a lawyer. Yeah, you can invoke your right to counsel, but you're going to jail tonight then. And I've heard that stuff. So the answer is, you've got to be prepared to be browbeaten. Here's the reality. They got to take you to a judge sooner or later. And that's your chance to say, Judge, I just want to go about my way. And they've got to have probable cause. And so, the long-term consequences versus the short-term consequences, people are so definitely scared of being arrested. And I assure you it's not a pleasant thing. But it's better than losing your driver's license for a year, or it's better than having the police completely incriminate you for something you didn't do. And false confessions are more common than people think because you do get browbeaten into agreeing to things you didn't do.
Well, yeah. I've been pulled over twice in my life, and I had an issue. It was on a federal property, so it ended up being I ended up with a pretrial agreement, and nothing really came of it. I had 3 months probation, but I did absolutely nothing, and basically had a false confession. I hadn't done anything. He gave me a roadside sobriety test, and I passed it. And he said, "Well, I'm going to give you a breathalyzer anyway."
Right.
And like you said, I blew a point. It was a .0175. It was ridiculous.
Now, let me explain something to you so that people know this. And by the way, talk line numbers are 540-0580, and our alternate talk lines today are 901-6712 and 901-6711. We got a little rollover problem here, folks. So those usually the rollovers, but you can call directly on 901-6712 and 901-6711. Jason, here's the problem with the standard field sobriety test. First of all, you're not going to pass them. On the roadside, late at night, you probably aren't going to pass them. Even on clean level, well-lit, fully awake, healthy adult is going to fail them 20% of the time. Okay? So imagine a test that there's 1 in 5 chance you're going to fail it, even if you're sober, it's well-lit, there's no wind, and you're not nervous, and there's not lights flashing and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
That's the test they use. Now, when you do pass them, the police then go to the breath test. Now, here's the reality. The reality is this. They were planning to go to the breath test any which way. You were getting that portable breath test whether you took the field sobriety test or not.
Right.
The reason for that is if you pass the field sobriety test, it doesn't help you because whether you pass or fail them is irrelevant versus your BAC. So they only use them to build a better case to incriminate you. And in fact, if you read the manuals, and I know something about this because I actually taught this to police officers. If you read their manuals, it tells them, do the standard field sobriety test, build your case, if you can. And if those don't work out, you give them the PBT, and that's why there's a particular order to these things. You're never going to see a guy do the PBT and then the standard field sobriety tests.
Okay.
Now, if you're really drunk, they'll just give you the PBT because they know that they know they're going to get high PBT off you right away. You got to take the official blood test, the official breath test. So remember that. If they say, would you go downtown with us for the blood test, or would you go downtown with us for the official breath test? You got to say yes to that.
So they can only use the blood test in court. They can't use the breathalyzer test.
The PBT can be used in court for purposes of whether they have probable cause to arrest you or not.
Okay.
I know that the police will generally want you to do a PBT. And the problem with doing a PBT is once you blow over a .08, you're cooked for sure. If you blow below, you're still possibly in danger. So I would never myself take the PBT roadside unless I'd had absolutely no alcohol to drink whatsoever for like 3 days. And that's never happened.
And you can refuse to take the PBT?
You can refuse to take the portable breath test roadside. And again, that's a judgment call. But I would not, I personally would not, as you saw in the video, I didn't answer questions and I didn't do standard field sobriety tests, and I would not have taken a portable breath test. If they had asked me, would you cooperate for a blood test or official breath test, I'd say, okay, throw me in the car, boys, let's go.
Okay, now I didn't plan on getting into all this, but I've been curious about this ever since it was 2003 or 2004 that this happened to me. When this all went down, it was, like I said, it was federal property. He gave me the roadside test and the portable breathalyzer test. They put me in his car and wrote me a ticket, and then told me I couldn't drive, and just went and said, who hasn't been drinking? And only one person in the vehicle had been, and everybody else said they hadn't. And he said, okay, text one of them and said, you drive. And gave me a ticket and said, you need to be in federal court this day.
Right.
Gave me a ticket. Is that how things are done, or was that completely done the wrong way?
Well, first of all, that's on a federal installation, so we're under the federal rules, so it's a little different than Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But the ticket he issued you, was it for a DUI?
No. I don't even...
Some other kind of driving offense, probably.
But yes, he said that somebody wasn't strapped in the back.
Right. That's a federal traffic ticket he gave you. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean that,
why do I need to appear in court for a traffic ticket?
In the federal system, you have a court date automatically, but you can send that in ahead of time and get the court date waived off. In the state system, we give you the ticket, and you got to set up the court date. In the federal system, they give you a court date, and they do that in a lot of states. You would automatically get a court date in New York State, for instance. So that doesn't really mean anything. That's just a procedural matter.
Interesting. Very interesting.
All right, Jason. Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. I'm going to take a few more callers. And if you got more questions, hit me up on Facebook or on weekendappointment.com, where you can, of course, see the video if you haven't already seen it.
I'll check it out later today. Thank you.
All right, my friend.